Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1203 of the War News stream. And we have massive news to cover today. We have seen that Russia launched a large drone attack, the largest one of the war today. Also, Ukraine destroyed multiple Russian fighter jets, and Iran rejects the U.S. nuclear deal in a very bold move. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of news from around the world, as we've been able to hear significant developments in practically every single region of the world that we have covered in the past, as we've been able to hear significant news and developments that the Russian Federation has seen another significant Ukrainian drone attack occur on their territory, with 2 aircraft in the Nizhny Novgorod region being destroyed, including a MiG-31K, a specialized Kinzhal hypersonic missile carrier, as well as an Su-34 fighter bomber. We have also been able to see that other drone attacks have continued to hit the towns of Cheboksary and Kazan, and we were also able to get actual footage of the drone attack in the area of Kazan just earlier today. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran has officially rejected the U.S. denuclearization deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran, and has instead counteroffered the United States that they now have to see the complete denuclearization of the state of Israel, and only then will the Iranians begin to even talk about ending their nuclear weapons program. With this clear indicator that the Islamic Republic of Iran will not be conducting denuclearization anytime soon, the ultimate and all-knowing wisdom of the U.S. government and the incredible President of the United States has decided that negotiations will press forward, even though the Israelis are now desperately saying that there is absolutely no hope at this point and military action must be taken. This is identically during the exact incident where the Israeli Air Forces continue to bomb and attack Houthi outposts throughout the area of Western-controlled Yemen, including the port of Al Hodeida, as we have been able to hear that the Yemeni Houthis have continued to fire missiles at the state of Israel continuously, once again showing that hostile actions by the Yemeni Houthis has not been curtailed either by Israeli actions up to this point or by U.S. actions under both the current administration and the last administration. Meanwhile, the People's Republic of China is now directly threatening U.S. territory, with an extremely dangerous and provocative military exercise being conducted today for the first time in history within the Western Pacific. This exercise involved an entire Chinese carrier strike group just several hundred miles away from the island of Guam, a significant U.S. territory and a major logistical base for the U.S. Navy's operations within the region. This is directly putting U.S. Western Pacific naval assets at risk of a possible first strike, and once again showing that the Chinese are now able to extend their naval arm much farther than they ever have been able to in any other era in history. Outside of that, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea has also stated that they will now be producing drones in support of the Russian war effort, specifically the Garon 2, which is a licensed version of the Shahed 136 from the Islamic Republic of Iran. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear that the Russian Federation has violated Finnish airspace today after a Russian jet flew incredibly far in, about a mile or two in, to Finnish airspace around the area of the Gulf of Finland. We have also been able to hear that Ukraine has been subjected to the largest drone attack in the history of the war, and not only that, the largest drone attack in the history of modern warfare, as the Russian Federation launched 480 drones overnight into the state of Ukraine, with a large amount of them hitting around the city of Kyiv, although still a great deal of them were also shot down. We have also been able to see the Ukrainian armed forces have continued to hold the front line today as much as they physically could, stopping Russian advances in most places and curtailing them in others. This has been a significant amount of news that we have to cover over the past 48 hours. And of course, there is a lot of major diplomatic developments that have been going on over the course of the day in practically every single front, including that of Ukraine, which we'll be getting into later on tonight, as we do have some ongoing developments, at least as far as foreign policy is concerned, directly out of Washington today as well. But moving on from that and on into our major news of the night, we have been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to conduct a significant series of drone strikes around the area of the Volga River. The Volga River is the Russian equivalent to the Mississippi River here inside the United States, or the Danube or the Rhine inside of Europe. It is a major economic artery of the Russian Federation, and a lot of Russia's largest cities outside of Moscow and St. Petersburg actually find themselves along the banks of the Volga River throughout its entire length. Most significantly, a lot of Russian war industry and critical infrastructure actually exists within the area around the Volga River, and then specifically in this epicenter around the southern Ural Mountains inside the Russian Federation. Here, back in the 1930s, the Soviet Union, under the orders of Joseph Stalin, began to move significant industry into these areas in preparation for strategic defense purposes. Later on, in the midst of World War II, a large remainder of those factories and facilities that had remained in the rest of the Soviet Union also began to move in this area, making it, even still to this day, a significant military and wartime production target, as a great deal of vital strategic infrastructure and war production is still conducted within the area of the Volga River Basin, as well as that of the southern Ural Mountains inside the Russian Federation. We have been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces have started what appears to be a concerted drone campaign. We're even hearing of launches that started right at the beginning of the stream that are targeting and hitting specific areas within this area of the Volga River. Starting the most far north that we can, at least of the attacks that we were able to hear of over the past 24 hours, we are able to go to Nizhny Novgorod, a significant city, and one that actually has a lot of historical significance in the Russian Federation, but more importantly, one of the airfields that surrounds Nizhny Novgorod, not that one in particular. I'm trying to rapidly find it, as I wasn't able to geolocate this one before the stream due to time constraints, but it is within the Nizhny Novgorod region. We were able to see that this airfield was targeted and hit, and according to Ukrainian sources, a MiG-31K and an Su-34 fighter bomber have both been destroyed in the attack that occurred at this airbase. And we were actually able to see clips filmed from on the ground near to the airbase showing the hits and the destruction of the aircraft.
Oh, wow.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh my god, this guy freaked out.
Bro, that guy sounded like Patrick Starr. Like, I don't even know what the hell he was supposed to be sounding like right there. Apparently he got a kick out of it or something, I don't even know. But moving on from that clip and on to our next one, we also got to see another clip of the attack right here as well.
Тихо, он где-то, блядь.
We hear the drone flying over and into the vicinity of the airbase, but then the clip ends very abruptly. From what we are able to understand, and this is the reason why I wasn't able to geolocate this quickly, this is the Savitslaika airbase inside of the Nizhny Novgorod region, and really quickly, hopefully I can find this rapidly, and it actually is right here. That's why I was not able to find it, because earlier I was actually looking around the city of Nizhny Novgorod, not the entirety of the Nizhny Novgorod Oblast. Nevertheless, this is the airbase that was targeted and hit, and just taking a cursory glance at the air assets within this area, it appears that it may be a rotary airlift wing that is based at this facility, although we are also able to see the appearance of MiG-31Ks, as well as, at least according to Ukrainian reports, Su-34s that were also present at this base. We can actually see a great deal of MiG-31Ks, even on satellite footage taken several months ago, at this specific airfield. It also appears that it may have been a temporary basing for a squadron or an air wing of Su-34s that may have been operating from this airbase during that time. The Ukrainians have stated that they were able to destroy one of the MiG-31Ks at the airbase, along with an Su-34 that was also at the Savitskaya airbase overnight during that attack. These aircraft are significant for the current Russian war effort, and we have especially been able to see that the MiG-31K has started to re-enter significance, at least over the recent periods of the drone attacks and missile attacks that have been occurring over prior days. After the attack and blistering defeat during Operation Spiderweb, where the Russian Federation lost 34% of its strategic bomber force, the Russian Federation has decided to respond in full force in the most practical way that they can. We originally believed that this was going to be conducted with either an IRBM or an ICBM attack, most likely using a Yars ICBM or an Oreshnik IRBM. We did not see either of those being used, and there were actually reports that apparently both attempts at launching either an Oreshnik or a Yars resulted in a catastrophic failure, either leading to no launch or to the loss of a missile once it was fired, although we were never able to confirm that second report. We were able to confirm, however, that it appears that missiles were actually failing within their mobile silos in the TELs and were not being launched for that reason. The Russian Federation has now decided, due to the unpredictability or unreliability more so of their IRBM and ICBM missile fleet, that they are now going to start hammering the Ukrainians the only way that they have left, which is with conventional missile and drone forces. We have seen that over the past few days, hundreds of drones have been launched along with dozens of missiles into the state of Ukraine with each passing night. And with each and every passing night, we've also seen that a few number of Iskanders have also been fired as well, meaning that for one of the few times in the war, the MiG-31K actually has a specific purpose and isn't really just sitting around waiting for when these missiles are going to be used. They are actually being used at this very moment. And you can actually see one MiG-31BM right here actually equipped with a Kinzhal. We also were able to hear another loss of an Su-34 fighter bomber. These have been heavily used over the course of the war in Ukraine by the Russian Federation and has become one of the primary aircraft within the Russian air arm that has been involved in the war. These aircraft are able to serve as a true multi-role platform, unlike other Russian aircraft like the Su-30 and the Su-27, which have a very difficult time serving as a true multi-role aircraft. The Su-34, for this reason, has become Russia's premier fighting aircraft, both at air and on the ground in the conflict, and we've seen a decent amount of these have ended up becoming the victim of Ukrainian ground air defense fire, and we've also been able to hear of some of these possibly being shot down in the air by other Ukrainian aircraft. However, this one was lost unceremoniously at the Savitskaya airfield inside of Nizhny Novgorod, along with the MiG-31, once again marking more significant losses of major airframes that the Russian Federation is currently using at this very moment to strike at Ukraine. It's adding on to the loss of the strategic bombers and adding on to the loss of a lot of other equipment that we have been able to see over the past few days alone, really over the past 2 weeks in total. But moving even further on down the Volga River, quite literally downstream into the area of Cheboksary, we were also able to hear of all of the clips of the strikes, and also we were able to get a list from Nexa of all of the strikes that actually did occur. And these are the three that we know of right now. In Nizhny Novgorod, which we just covered, they were able to destroy a MiG-31 and an Su-34. We also were able to hear that in Cheboksary, the clip that we're about to see right here, there was a strike on a plant that produces components for missiles, and the facility is located in the Chuvashy Republic, which is technically the Cheboksary Oblast area, which is about a 1,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, or about 700 miles. We also were able to hear of a significant paint and varnish factory that is on fire in Kazan, also targeted and destroyed by Ukrainian forces. And unfortunately, folks, I cannot actually tell y'all what strategic significance the paint and varnish factory is actually playing in the war. It was directly targeted by the Ukrainians, and we actually have video and picture evidence to confirm the direct hits, but at this moment, unfortunately, I was not able to find a specific reason as to why that facility was hit. But here's one of the clips coming out of Cheboksary showing the direct impacts onto the factory that produces components for Russian missiles. And we can see the Houthis coming on in.
Wow, a direct hit.
Man, a direct hit. Very nice. We see them closing the window. I don't know why. It's not really like this is going to do anything. And we can also see the smoke and flames rising from this facility in Cheboksary from another angle, as well as the sound of an explosion. Meanwhile, we also were able to see the clips once again from the area of Sevasklaya in Nizhny Novgorod, and we also were able to see the video of the paint and varnish factory on fire inside of the area of Kazan in this clip right here. And we also were able to see it as well right here. This is a bit of a lengthier clip. And look at that, it's another railroad. I mean, they keep on trying to force me to talk about them trains, I tell you.
It's almost like they're getting railroaded. Also, there's a dude lurking around everything, which is looking oddly suspicious, I must admit.
Man, he's looking a little bit sus.
And what is that burning in there again? Like, is that chemicals or something?
Apparently, it may be an amalgamation of chemicals that are used to make paint and thinners inside of this factory.
Ah, well, that's quite lovely.
Yeah, it's very volatile.
Нет, тут вообще тушить даже сбоку бесполезно, наверное.
And I mean, that thing is absolutely roaring, really. I don't think that fire could ever be controllable at this kind of a size.
There's a guy standing there. There was a car driving into the fire over there. I just saw on the side. Russians just amaze me at their reaction to fire. It's completely the opposite of what it should be.
It really is, honestly. It's a pretty crazy thing. While this was a paint and thinner factory, it appears that everyone working in the factory is only going to be specializing in thinner because they're not going to be able to have any wages to get some food at this point because of the loss of the factory that they were working in. Moving on from that, though, we also were able to see further on down at Kazan the actual massive fire once again in this clip. This was actually taken further back. You can actually see a train passing right in front of the fire. I would say that this is a considerable hazard, but nevertheless, the Russians do not care, and we can see the train passing right by as the fire is now truly enveloping the entirety of this side of the factory. We also got to see something a little bit rare. When the drone was entering into Kazan, we actually got to see a Pantsir S-1 actually attempted to shoot down one of the drones, and it failed. The missile actually exploded a little bit too high and completely missed the drone, allowing it to continue on and press towards its target and successfully hit it. Here's the clip. There's the drone. There was the Pantsir's missile. Literally blew up right above it. It was maybe like 4 or 5 yards above the drone. Completely missed it. None of the shrapnel hit the drone, and the drone continued flying directly towards the target in Kazan. I can't believe it. We actually saw Russian air defense for the first time ever, and it completely failed. Like, it actually failed on its own without anything else. We always said if the Russians had air defense, they might be able to lock their airspace down, and now the proof is in the pudding right here. If they even have air defense, it just misses. I don't even know how it misses because it's a proximity-fused missile along with radar guidance. So technically, it shouldn't miss. It should be able to hit its target dead on. But nevertheless, this literally completely missed. So the drone just kept on going.
Just crazy. There's no hope for Russia like this. It's just a no-win situation for them.
Man, Russia is truly cooked. Bro, you know, it's unfortunate that they lost all of that paint in the paint factory because they could have used all that to paint up their faces to look like clowns with the kind of circus they're running in the country.
Oof.
Man, big oof. And we also got to see another clip of the attack on the drone factory right here. Take a look at this. We can hear the explosion of air defense, the car alarms going off, and that actually was where the drone was, right over there. That's the failed explosion from a second angle as one of the drones was flying in towards the factory. We can even hear another explosion of air defense.
Very observant, Olga. Good job.
It was flying over there, and then bang. It's like, man, this person's comprehension on point. Solid, honestly. We hear one of the
sound
drones.
of angry hornets in the morning. Oh,
that looks
they
like
got
the failed
that one,
air
looks like.
defense. That actually looked like the failed air defense again from a third angle here, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yep, and we can hear the thing still running. So yeah, that was actually the miss again. Oh, attack da. Ah, yes, the natural sounds of Russia. It always sounds like a McDonald's, you know, with all, like, the beeps and stuff going on out there. But still, it appears that the paint and varnish factory was hit dead on, and the Russians were dealt more critical blows to vital war industry. Although, once again, I do want to point out, I have absolutely no clue how the paint and varnish factory is really keying into the rest of the war effort. There is a strategic goal behind it, but at this moment, I'm entirely uncertain as to how that actually works. Beyond that, Ukraine just destroyed several Russian fighter jets near Moscow using drones. And a lot of people have been talking about that. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So, of course, we did see in the very first report on the stream that Ukraine has destroyed several more Russian fighter jets that were sitting on the tarmac using these drones near Moscow. So the big question is, are Russia's losses unsustainable? Because so far, they've lost a ton of aircraft just over the last couple of weeks and now just today alone. So a lot of very expensive losses they really cannot afford to have. So 54% said, yes, the losses are simply too much, while 19% said it really depends on outside allies, whether or not China steps in to help. And 17% said, no, Russia can manage and will recover totally on their own. And honestly, I'm with the 54%. I think the losses are way too much. The losses were enough when the drone box situation happened and all these different airfields got hit simultaneously with the sneak attack. That was already very, very bad because that was a ton of strategic bombers that were taken out in one go. But now they're losing more fighter jets that are literally sitting on the ground. They're not lost in air-to-air battles. They're lost before they even take off. So it's losses they can't keep up, very expensive aircraft, and it's just not looking very good for Russia. Let's just put it that way. But Enforcer, what say you?
So at this point, over the past few weeks, the Russians have actually lost about 45 to 47 airframes at this point from attacks. Either attacks where the aircraft were shot down in action, like the one over Kursk, or the MiG-31 and the Su-34 that were just lost, or the 41 bombers that were also destroyed during Operation Spiderweb. This has been a very dark 2 weeks, a fortnight is what it's technically called, for the Russian Federation. They have lost a significant amount of the Russian Air Force in 2 weeks alone. And not only that, a lot of its strategic abilities and even tactical air support abilities are also now being jeopardized and threatened directly by Ukrainian strikes. With this in mind, I would say that the losses are starting to become a little bit too much in such a short period of time. I do have to remind you all that based off of the casualty report, these kinds of losses are completely unheard of on average on any other given day of the war. As a matter of fact, the largest loss that was taken in a single day from this point on was 5 Russian aircraft, helicopters and fixed wing, that were shot down on a single day. And from what we were able to confirm, that wasn't even the Ukrainians that shot all of those down. It was actually Russian air defense that panicked and shot down all 5 of them within the course of 2 hours. So even still, the largest loss of aircraft that was ever conducted in the war so far was actually conducted by the Russians on the Russians in a single day. We have never seen these kinds of losses being inflicted on the Russian Air Force by the Ukrainians at any given point in the war on such a small period. And considering that this is still going on at this point, I think the Russian Federation's Air Force may start to get overwhelmed, and we may also see that there is less of a significant involvement of Russian Air Force assets going up against the state of Ukraine, considering that they're starting to lose them at a rapidly fast pace. So I'd largely go with that. That hasn't stopped the Russians, though, however, from breaching Finnish airspace with some of the aircraft that they have left. As we were able to hear that a Russian military aircraft is suspected of violating Finnish airspace off Porvoo Tuesday, according to the Ministry of Defense. The Ministry of Defense Antti Hakanen, says in the statement from the Ministry of Defense that an investigation into the suspected airspace violation has been launched immediately. The border guards are currently investigating the incident. They are the responsible body in charge of trying to gather the data and intelligence to see if the aircraft actually did violate the airspace. But there was already a previous suspected airspace violation that occurred in May, which we covered here on the channel, when Russian military aircraft were suspected of violating airspace near to the area of the city of Vyborg. The suspected airspace violation also occurred off of Porvu. Nevertheless, we also have been able to hear, on top of all of this, that the Russian Federation is starting to get a little bit ramped up with the threats against the West. We have actually been able to hear that a lot of countries inside of Europe are preparing for such an action that may be coming down the line. For example, the Republic of Poland, it's no longer the People's Republic of Poland, has actually assigned a massive contract with Hyundai Rotem of South Korea, and according to what we've been able to hear, this is actually South Korea's most expensive weapons export ever. Currently, the South Korean government and the Polish government are finalizing a massive deal that is around $6 billion to produce 180 K2 Panther tanks, pictured here. These are a product of the Hyundai company. So if you were driving around in any kind of a Hyundai, like a Hyundai Elantra, you can actually thank that company for producing a pretty decent main battle tank. They also produce those on the side through the Hyundai Rotem subsidiary. But beyond that, some of these will actually be assembled directly in Poland. We already know that a large amount of Hyundai Rotem equipment is already being produced inside of Poland, as a massive contract had already been made in the past for Hyundai Rotem to produce R600 Rhinos, and let me go show you all those. Let's see here, Rhino, and let's see. Oh, hang on. Oh, my lord. Did I forget? I'm just going to go type up the Polish name of it, the Rosimak. This is one that's known by everyone. But this is actually a South Korean product as well, and these have been produced in massive numbers by Hyundai Rotem, quite literally in the hundreds, over about the past year. And currently, the Polish have now opened up, I believe it's 2 major facilities that are responsible for producing the remainder of the Rosimaks that would be put into Polish service. From what we are largely able to understand, and let me go see if I can get you all the actual name of the South Korean version, and it actually doesn't appear that I can. I don't know why. That's interesting. But it is a variant of a South Korean APC. Let's see here. Actually, this says it's derived from the Patriot. Wait, hang on. Let me go look at Polish ground equipment. Am I getting this wrong? Because I would doubt that I'm getting this wrong, but it looks like I am. So let me go check this really quick, because there is some Polish APCs that are actually South Korean in origin, much like the K2s. But I'm going to have to check and make sure that I'm actually quoting the right ones here, because now I'm seeing that I may not be. And that would be one hell of a slip-up right there. So it actually appears they have the Rosimaks, they have the Borsuk, which is entirely Polish, and then they have the BWPs, which are BMP-1s. For some reason, I'm remembering that they had a Hyundai Rotem factory open to produce some sort of a version of the Rosimak specifically, but I'm actually not seeing that anywhere on here at all, as a matter of fact. So maybe I'm misquoting that information, because we have actually covered on the stream before the opening of Hyundai Rotem factories to produce infantry fighting vehicles, and I'm actually not finding these infantry fighting vehicles on any of their spreadsheets. So we'll have to see what happened with that and also try and correct that information later. But for now, we're going to make sure to keep the news running. Beyond that, we have also been able to hear, and this would be a great time to ask everyone the question, Matthew, that according to a German ambassador, a former German ambassador that's now going to be working in Rome for the Vatican, he has actually stated that the German government has information that the Russian Federation is soon to be preparing for an attack against NATO. And at this very moment, they are still mobilizing to try and prepare for this eventual conflict that they'll be conducting against Europe. And the big question is whether the United States would be there or not. At the moment, however, it does appear with attempts by the Polish to mobilize along with the Germans and their German ambassadors saying that there is clear and credible information of an imminent threat from the Russian Federation, that there is most likely going to be some kind of serious hostile action that will be conducted by the Russian Federation against the entirety of NATO and the entirety of Europe here within the future. A lot of people have been talking about the statement this ambassador has made. We do understand that at this moment he is now working for the Catholic Church inside of the Vatican, inside of the confines of the Italian border, although technically it's an independent country, but many people have continued to talk about the statements from the ambassador and also have started to talk a lot about the different kinds of possibilities. Some people believe that the ambassador is speaking truth and there is a real credible threat to Europe. Others are saying that this is a little bit of a far-fetched assumption, and while they may have had some information that Russia is considering some sort of an invasion or a significant offensive against NATO, the Russian Federation's military is in such a bad and derelict state at this point due to the significant losses that have been suffered inside of Ukraine, and not only that, the crippling logistics and economic structure of the Russian Federation, it doesn't really seem like it would be likely that Russia could start, although they couldn't really win the war. That seems to be one of the big issues that a lot of people have been saying that has been detracting from the statements of this ambassador. Nevertheless, a lot of people have been talking about the statements of this top German ambassador. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we've asked the entire audience the question. We said sources claim a top German official has evidence that Russia plans to attack NATO soon, and what are your thoughts on that extremely bold claim? So 47% said it is likely true, a real threat, while 30% said it's likely untrue and not a threat, and 18% said it seems to be a 50-50 chance of that actually being true that the top German official is repeating. So I would say, generally speaking, that with Russia being so volatile right now, and also at the very edge of the, I guess you could say, the cliff, basically, of their economy, the military, their entire war effort inside of Ukraine, that Russia is desperate. There's no doubt about that. So when people get desperate, they usually do stupid stuff. And that would be, of course, attacking NATO. That would be the ultimate stupid act that Russia could do. And we've been hearing not just from this German official, but also from other NATO officials that the likelihood of Russia attacking is going up. And even though it doesn't make sense for them to do it, that still doesn't rule it out, because Russia doesn't operate on logic. They operate on emotion and also just insanity. So for them to attack, let's say, a Baltic state like Estonia, Latvia, or Lithuania, that is certainly on the table. They could simply decide to missile the country. They could decide to invade their borders. There's a whole wide variety of things they could do. And also, once again, they're sending a ton of troops up toward the Finnish border. That's obviously a red flag. So I would say that it's probably likely very true. It is a real threat. And also, NATO just called today for raising defense spending by 400% for every NATO country inside of Europe. So, I mean, if that doesn't tell us something, then I'm not sure what does. So I'm with the 46%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I wanted to say that, in my opinion, I believe that it is possibly a actual credible threat, because a lot of people have always talked, and this is something I would have to agree with here, because we have to work within the confines of reality. The Russian Federation can actually attempt a war with NATO. Whether they are going to do well at that or not, they can actually start one. It generally isn't the idea, and this is kind of where there is a bit of a nuance here between the two camps, because both are technically right to some extent. Both the people who are saying the Russians just militarily could not even attempt to win a long drawn-out conflict with NATO, and the others who are saying it's a real credible threat. Both of y'all are actually correct in both of those major groups of thinking. The issue, however, is that Russia doesn't have to necessarily win the conventional war. They just have to start it. The way that the Russians have been currently operating in the world since the collapse of the Soviet Union, and especially since the polarization of the Russian Federation and its open hostility towards the West over the past 2 decades for the large part, we have seen that the Russian Federation has once again started to lean onto its nuclear arsenal as pretty much the be-all, say-all, and end-all. Pretty much, when you get into an argument with Russia, they immediately pull out the 44 Magnum and put it straight to your head, and that's the way that they try and win an argument. With the Russian Federation at the moment, the military is completely incapable of conducting any significant offensives across a European-wide front. They would be able to gain a decent amount of ground, at least compared to what people are originally believing right now, in the opening of an offensive, but that initial burst of speed and that initial burst of success would immediately be met by stiff resistance and strong counterattacks that would most likely see most Russian lines collapse due to a complete lack of ability to deal with the NATO resistance, even without the United States being involved. With that paired together, the Russian Federation will start to get pushed back, but NATO can't drive them to Moscow. There's going to be no to Moscow sorts of speeches, because once that starts to happen, once the front lines start to solidify, and it looks like Ukraine, the NATO is preparing to conduct counterattacks against Russian forces, the Russians will immediately pull out the nuclear card, and at that point, it is going to be quite a significant one. The Russian Federation will have started an alliance that is nuclear armed, and the Russian Federation is also nuclear armed. So the Russian Federation will pretty much be saying on a governmental level, we are willing to kill everyone to get what we want. Are y'all willing to die as well? And the Europeans, pretty much on their own at that point, will have to answer yes or no. And we don't know how that would really end up in reality, because they might not be able to reclaim any of the land that Russia has taken, because once again, they could just threaten to whip out the nukes. But at the same time, Europe could threaten that if they don't get that land back, they are going to start rolling out their own nukes against the Russian Federation for violating the sovereignty of NATO. So with that in mind, there's actually a bit of a mix there. Yes, the Russians cannot win a war against NATO, but at the same time, the possibility of an invasion and them immediately threatening nukes once the shock of their offensive ends and it starts to become a grueling conflict is a pretty likely reality. So I'd actually have to go with, for that reason, the 45% that say it's a likely true real threat that has to be considered and eyeballed very attentively, because the Russian Federation may actually be preparing to take some sort of insane, drastic measure as that. Putin has become quite unpredictable over the course of the war and has shown over the past 3 years that he does not operate on any sort of a logical principle. He has pretty much operated as himself and as a nation in a self-destructive form. We have seen that they have continuously wrecked the Russian economy to continue on a deadly war in Ukraine that appears to have absolutely no end in sight. Even if the US was to stop all support to Ukraine, it appears that the Ukrainians could continue on quite easily just with European support alone. They have a massive drone manufactory inside of Ukraine that is able to produce enough drones that it pretty much bridges the gap in the disparity of conventional fires that are being conducted on both sides by artillery, and allows for the Ukrainians to be able to defend their lines while suffering minimal casualties. With that in mind, it is going to be a pretty tough deal for the Russian Federation to ever make any ground against Ukraine, and yet they still are. It's completely illogical. And so it is throwing the idea out there that while attacking and attempting to invade vast swaths of Eastern Europe, which is now part of NATO, would be illogical, it may be something that the Russians are actually considering. And we have to make sure that Europe and the entirety of NATO, including the United States, is able to prepare for such an exigent circumstance. Beyond that, however, we are going to be moving on from this bit of news inside of Europe and on down into the Middle East, because if you all thought that all of the European news was big, wait until we get into the Middle East, because now there's a lot going on down here. We have been able to hear that yesterday the Islamic Republic of Iran finally gave its official response to the U.S. negotiations that have been attempting to see that Iran will only pursue peaceful nuclear efforts. And actually, as a matter of fact, the President of the United States changed at the last minute his statements and said, now we're not just looking for a peaceful nuclear efforts by the Islamic Republic of Iran, we are now looking for them to completely stop any kind of uranium enrichment inside of their country. The Iranians have responded, and the answer was a resounding no. They have completely rejected the nuclear deal that was proposed by the United States. We were able to hear that after the Iranians rejected the deal, the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Israel were soon to get on a phone call and talk about the situation. The Prime Minister of Israel got onto a phone call with the President of the United States, and apparently this was a part of what came out of the talk. According to the President said, I haven't given up on negotiations. The Iranians will give a bad response, but not one that closes the door. Netanyahu also responded, we must maintain a credible military threat against Iran at all time. And then the President of the United States responded, I believe I'll eventually succeed in reaching a deal. For now, the attack should be off of the agenda. And that was according to Channel 12.
Yeah, that's a joke.
Yeah, this is a joke. So basically, folks, I just want to make sure to put this out there to all of y'all. We have gone through 5 rounds of talks at this point with the Islamic Republic of Iran since the new administration has taken office. We have heard time and time again, the Iranians have run circles around the U.S. negotiators. They have not tried to find any common ground with the United States or any attempt at compromise, and we have seen this happen 5 times. This last time, we heard an ultimatum given by the President of the United States that if the Islamic Republic of Iran did not accept the U.S. deal, that we were going to move in and start conducting significant airstrikes and military action against the Islamic Republic of Iran to forcibly stop them from producing a nuclear weapon. If you do not believe me, I believe that we actually have on last week's map the very direct statements that he made about the situation. I'm going to go grab those really quickly so that way some people who are trying to say that we're putting a political spin on this are not able to just lie freely. So let me go here to June 4th, which was our last week's map, and let me go over here to the United States because I'm fairly certain that it should be on this map. And let's see here. It actually doesn't appear that it's in this area of the map. Let me go over here and check this as well. Here we go. So, the president said he will not allow any enrichment of uranium by Iran, and there was another additional statement that was made, let's see here, that the Israelis were going to strike within several days. Is this even further back than last week? Let me go check our other map. So we would have to check this one. Let me check this one, because there is a map that we had where he made a very direct statement against the Iranians. So let's see here. Restrictions to be, let's see. Threats to Russia. Let's see. Russia will keep going. Where in the hell are the statements about the Iranians? Because we had it somewhere. We either have it on our Twitter, or we have it. Dang. Did I not put it on the map? Oh, so apparently it's on our Twitter. I swore that I put it on one of these maps. It's on our Twitter. I'm pretty sure it's a good ways back. But nevertheless, the president, paraphrasing what he said, stated that, look, we want to talk our way through this, but if the Iranians don't accept the current deal, which is the one they just rejected, we'll have no option but to go in with military force and take out the nuclear weapons that way. Now, after that happened, we're now hearing that the president of the United States has now heard that the Iranians did reject the fifth deal, and is now saying, instead of bombing them, because time has practically run out according to everyone that is not the president of the United States, we are now going to go into, believe it or not, folks, a sixth round of talks. And not only that, the Iranians are now demanding for Israel's nuclear arsenal to be forcibly dismantled by the United States.
Oh. Also, doesn't Israel doesn't formally acknowledge the fact that they have nuclear weapons, do they? Like, that's something that's like a state secret, right?
Yeah, the state of Israel has never officially acknowledged the existence or ownership of any nuclear weaponry by the state of Israel.
Yeah, it's just insane. It's like, also, by the way, it's like, first of all, they don't acknowledge they have them. That's number one. And number two, even if they did acknowledge they had them, Iran is on the cusp of actually creating a nuke. Why would Israel give theirs up if the other force is about to gain them? That would make no sense. That is literally like a statement designed by Iran to derail the entire talks. I think Iran's even getting tired of going through the talks and even pretending to go through the motions. This was basically saying, let's just end it right now on Iran's side.
It's just ridiculous at this point. So once again, folks, the president is saying, I gotta say, folks, I'm not trying to get political here, but I don't know if the president is a schmuck or what at this point, but the Iranians made it incredibly clear by rejecting the fifth talks, and once again, those talks made it nowhere much like the prior four before them. They rejected this outright, so we're not agreeing to anything at all. We're not even agreeing to a baseline of anything. So then the president tells the prime minister of Israel that we believe that we actually can achieve a peace with them, although we have gone past the third time's the charm. We're on the fifth time, it has to eventually be right, and then we're going to go into a sixth round of talks. I don't know what's up with this anymore, because we already heard from the IAEA that they have conducted some form of light nuclear tests with enriched uranium at a weapons grade already, and it appears that they are incredibly close to producing a nuclear weapon. That is literally coming from, and I'm not kidding, that's literally coming from the Agency on Atomic Energy. This isn't even the group that's responsible for inspecting and maintaining any kind of records on nuclear weapons around the world. It's actually not their responsibility. It's actually the responsibility, if I'm correct, at least on the US's end, of the US Department of Energy. And nevertheless, even they are saying that there is clear proof of undeclared nuclear tests that have no clear civilian use. So once again, it's become quite clear at this point, time is practically running out. Unless if we go in and do something to stop the Islamic Republic of Iran from producing a nuclear weapon, they are going to have one incredibly soon. These talks are doing nothing but stalling, and not only that, they're getting absolutely nowhere. Even the Iranians are showing that by coming up with absurd statements like saying that they actually want the Israeli nuclear arsenal to be forcibly dismantled in response to the US wanting them to denuclearize the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's just getting absolutely crazy at this point. I don't even know why we're even encouraging or entertaining any kind of talks with the Islamic Republic of Iran at this point, because it is quite clear they're not even taking them sincerely, much like the Russian Federation is taking none of our talks sincerely as well. We are literally running ourselves in circles, achieving nothing, and only making the United States look weaker and weaker, because we get into talks, they are completely rejected. We will go into 7 more rounds of talks, and then in between the talks, we are issuing ultimatums that they either accepted or we go in and blow everyone to pieces, and then when it actually comes to them rejecting it again, then we just go, okay, maybe another round of talks will get them to the table this time. It's just making no sense to me at this point. I just don't really know where we're going with this. This is on top, mind you, of the Yemeni Houthis, a direct Iranian proxy supported and funded by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran, still continuing launches against the Israelis. We were able to see actual interceptions being conducted of Houthi ballistic missiles over the skies of western Jerusalem just a little while ago, even with El Al aircraft flying within the airspace in the midst of the attack, which we can see in this clip right here. And we can see the air defense operating. We can also see the El Al aircraft possibly firing some sort of defensive chaff and flares. And we can also see another clip as well. We can see the commercial aircraft up there once again. And we can see another clip here of the air defense in action. That's the end of that clip right there, but still showing us that the Yemeni Houthis are still conducting airstrikes. Not only that, to wrap this up before we ask you all about a little something else, we are seeing that the Israelis are still having to conduct airstrikes against the port of Hodeidah. This is a picture from today after the Israeli Air Force conducted successful airstrikes against the targets in this region. And it once again is showing that the Israeli Air Force is still continuing an aggressive campaign to try and put down the Houthis, not to try and destroy a force of the Islamic Republic of Iran's, but to just try and retaliate against the endless attacks that are being conducted by the Houthis against the state of Israel. And it's starting to show at this point that it seems as though the United States is completely inept at handling the situation in the Middle East. It's something that I really can't even act like is not the case anymore. There is quite clearly a action that has to be taken. It may not be popular, but it's the one that has to be done at this point. There is no other option. There's no other alternative anymore. And the Iranians have rejected the U.S. nuclear deal again, and we're going into another round of talks, the 6th round of talks. All 5 of them have failed so far. We're now going to go into the 6th one, and I'm pretty sure all of y'all know the old moniker, third time's the charm. We're now going into the second time of the third time's the charm is hopefully going to be the charm. And a lot of people are wondering what's going to be happening in the Middle East as a result of this. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we asked you all the question. We said Iran has rejected the U.S. nuclear deal for the, what is it, like 6th or 7th time or something? I'm not even sure at this point, but the 5th time. So Israel convened a top-level security meeting, literally including every important person in their cabinet of Israel. So obviously a very important meeting. So what happens from here? So 61% said Iran gets attacked by Israel as a result of this recent move, while 27% said the U.S. bends to Iran and keeps them talking, and 7% said it seems like a 50-50 chance of either the first or the last option. And really, like, it's really not even political at this point. Our approach with Iran is not working. It's extremely weak, and Iran is taking full complacency in that. Like, they're fully taking advantage of it, and Iran is playing it to their advantage. So it's obviously not going good, and we can't keep on this road, or Iran is going to play us for a fool up until the exact point they develop a nuclear weapon. Then they're nuclear armed, and now we have no leverage anymore. So that's not wise. Someone needs to become the leader in the situation and take the situation over in the Middle East, and Israel, by default, is that country which should take the lead in that because they are in the region and they have the ability to strike Iran and eliminate that threat. So I think Israel's obviously moving that direction. They want to do it. The only thing holding Israel back right now is the fear of consequences from the United States. That's the one thing holding them back. But if it were not for that, I'm very strongly believing that Israel would have attacked Iran already. They would have already hit the nuclear sites, and they were already taking all that stuff out. So that is what needs to happen. I'm going to say I'm with the 61%. I think Israel is approaching the point where they're about to actually go over the mark of actually pulling that off and actually striking Iran in its entirety. So it's been a long time coming. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to say, this is most likely going to result in the Israelis having to attack Iran, whether the U.S. supports that or not, because the United States in the current leadership is non-existent in foreign policy right now. It doesn't even exist. And I see some people, and I'm going to address this really quickly. Some people are trying to say, well, I guess the no politics rule is out of the window. It's not. But the issue here is, folks, is that we have been saying for years now, and I always know that whenever people say that, it's not because they actually want political neutrality. They want to actually hear that their president is doing good. Because back in the day, under the prior president, it was all the Democrats who were saying that about us whenever we would criticize the weakness of the last president in foreign policy. When we're criticizing the insane weakness of the current administration, which is even worse than the last one at this point, then a certain group of people, most likely Republican aligned, didn't want to say that we're not getting into, we are starting to get into politics. The reality is, folks, is that this channel runs on a specific guideline of what the United States has within its interest. And it's quite clear and obvious when you look at everything going on in the world, what the United States has to do. There is a point where there is something worthwhile of getting into talks, but there's also another time when the time for talks is past, either because of the incompetence of the last administration, or just because something is developing so rapidly there is no time for talks, or action must be taken. And we have been saying under the last administration and this one, that the Islamic Republic of Iran is in a dangerous country. It is developing nuclear weapons that are directly going to threaten the entirety of the Middle East, and they are going to be developing ICBMs that will also threaten the United States as well. It's putting all of y'all, whether y'all like to hear it or not, under a nuclear target. That's what it's doing. It's possibly going to kill you. This isn't something that's across the seas. That's not our issue. It is a country that directly hates two countries specifically, the United States of America and the State of Israel, and they are hell-bent in any way, shape, or form on causing death and destruction in either of those countries by any means necessary. A country like that having a nuclear weapon isn't thousands of miles away from us and not our problem. That is directly our problem. If there was anything in the world that would ever be our problem, it would be a country that hates our guts getting nuclear weapons. And the fact that the current administration is, in my opinion, doing far worse than the last one at this point. The last one literally did nothing, which was a huge failure, and I did not think that it could get worse than that. The current one is actually engaging in talks. We now know that they are quite truly a short whiles away from actually having a usable nuclear weapon, and now we are saying, let's just keep getting into multiple endless talks with them. Clearly, every single one of them is stalling, hanging up, and then failing 5 times over now. Let's get into a 6th round of talks, because this time it's going to work. Why in the world would we think it would work? I would say that maybe 3 rounds of talks was appropriate. I still think that's a bit of a stretch. I think 2 should have been tried, and once they were insincere in the second try, we should have moved on into military action. But a 6th round of talks after the 5th one failed, and now they're going to insult our delegations by saying that they want the state of Israel to be nuclear dismantled in terms of nuclearization. I mean, this is ridiculous at this point. How in the world do we negotiate with a country that not only is not getting anywhere with us on finding common ground on denuclearization, but now they are going to flip the tables, and they're actually going to tell us that we have to denuclearize Israel? Like, this is just absurd. I mean, like, there's no way to go about negotiating with a country like that, much less 6 times over. That's not political at all.
And also, I don't get it, because Israel is wanting to be the one spearheading the operation to attack Iran. They're the ones who want to go in and strike the nuclear sites. So the United States is not only taking the initiative by saying, okay, let's do this together. Let's go in as an Israel-U.S. coalition and go strike Iran together since we're allies. They're not saying to do that, obviously. And then they're telling Israel, not only are we not going to do it together, but also you by yourself as a sovereign country, meaning Israel, we're going to prohibit you from doing that. And if you decide to go attack Iran against our wishes, there could be consequences. That's reckless, is what that is. It's very reckless, because it's going to chill Israel. They're not going to want to attack Iran openly because they're going to be so scared of the United States. Because between Iran and the United States, I would imagine that Israel probably is much more scared of the consequences coming from the U.S. side of things. So that might hold them back. And it's going to cause Israel long-term consequences, because once Iran gets the nuke, they're going to wield that like the reckless weapon it truly is. And in the hands of terrorists, which is Iran, it's extremely deadly. So it's just really bad decision making all the way around. There needs to be some type of leadership here, like in this situation, because we've been yapping about this for months. So has everybody else. All the analysts have been yapping about it. We've been yapping about it. Regular people have been yapping about it. Everybody's been talking about it, and nobody's doing anything about it. It's just staying status quo, and it's going to eventually lead to a point where Iran actually has the nuke. It's going to be more than just talk. It's going to be reality at some point, and then everybody's going to be on a whole nother level of talking, which is, what do we do now that this madman country is in possession of the most dangerous weapon in existence? And at that point, you're screwed.
you are screwed. And I just see a lot of people, and I gotta say, it's always a little bit disappointing to see this. We have criticized the prior president. Just want to make this a little bit clear because some people get their panties in a wad when we talk about president's failings. We talked in great depth in the last administration, which was Biden, who was a Democrat, about how he was failing in the Middle East because he was doing literally nothing. And all he did was conduct some airstrikes against the Houthis, which I consider to be completely weak and completely incompetent. And we should have conducted a ground invasion against the Houthis, crushed them, and stopped them from ever being a threat to U.S. or global shipping. And then we should have moved on to providing ultimatums to Iran during that period. That was not done. With the ushering in of a new administration, which is now, of course, as many people know, Republican, I was expecting that there hopefully would be some kind of a change in how we were conducting foreign policy, although it appears that belief was just completely poorly founded. This is something that should have been dealt with in the past administration. It was not dealt with, and now the current administration is doing the exact same thing. But not only that, time is now ticking. There is no luxury of time like we had under the last administration. We now have a ticking time bomb. They are quite clearly close to actually having a nuclear weapon right now, and continuing to go through endless rounds of talks like this, we are going to get absolutely nowhere. There's just nowhere to go with this. We are going to keep fooling ourselves into pretending like these talks work until they get a nuclear weapon, and then everyone's going to be complaining that we're under another nuclear target, much like we were under with the North Koreans or the Russians or the Chinese. And then everyone's going to be trying to point the finger and point the blame at whoever their political party isn't. But the reality is that this has been a failing of everyone on every end for the past 10 years. But at this moment, the frustration is coming from this is a new administration that could have done something different and could actually bring a stop to this if they wanted to, much like the last one. And once again, the option is being taken of trying to just look the other way and pretend like this imminent threat is not forming in front of our eyes. Not only that, we are tying the hands of the only country in the region that might be able to do something, the state of Israel, from actually dealing with the threat on their own if they wanted to. And it's just something that is a complete mishandling, in my opinion. It's not good. Like, that's all I can really say about this. This is not good at all. It wasn't good in the last administration. It wasn't good in the current one. And once again, want to make it incredibly clear, we are staying politically neutral here, but this is the reality of the situation. And I can't act like this is great, or that this is some sort of a great move. Because if I'm going to say that this is a great move, I have to go back in the last administration and say just avoiding the situation and not even addressing it was a masterstroke of genius. And neither of those choices and neither of those actions were smart or wise decisions in any way. Like I'm sorry to say that to y'all folks, but it's as neutral as I can make it. The analysis is as sound as I can make it. This is what it is. I'm an American at the end of the day, if some of y'all don't realize it. And when I think about decisions that pertain to this country, I think about keeping people alive, safe, and with a lot of money in their pockets in this country. That's really what the end of the day comes down to. I don't really care what you think or where you're from. If you're from the city or if you're from the countryside, something like this is threatening us all. Whether you're on one party or the other, or in one group or the other, this is a serious, imminent threat. This is actually possibly going to end up getting us all killed one day. And we continue to see that, much like from 2015 to now, we are continuing on with just letting the Iranians do what they want and not doing anything about them. It's just a weak response, really. It's something that I would say is inherently against American interests to let the Iranians produce and field a nuclear weapon. And it looks like we're just going to continue to let them do that and do some filler actions in the meantime to make it look like we tried to do something. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news that we have for tonight, because we were also able to hear some concerning news from the area of the Western Pacific. And there is quite a decent amount that has been going on out here as well. But before we get into that, I do want to make sure that we address a couple of questions from the chat. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first Super Chat segment of the night. We've had some very generous donations tonight and good questions as well. And our first one goes to Tornadoes, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Tornadoes, for that support and helping to get the channel running once again. And I do not see a comment attached to it, sadly. So nothing to address. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running, Tornadoes, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running like a tornado. We wouldn't be able to keep this thing spinning and turning every single day to be able to put this news out there and to be able to put out as much analysis and information as we can. It's an amazing thing to know that folks like you appreciate this channel and help it to keep on running, because once again, if it wasn't for the folks going out of their way to support this channel and helping to keep on running, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible each and every single day. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are going to be moving on into the next one.
All right, and our second Super Chat here goes to Con LSA, who puts in a $20 donation as well. And thank you very much, Con, for also being a longtime channel legend just like Tornadoes. And we appreciate that support once again. And he said, take one from the chat, guys, and LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to take one from the chat in your honor, Con LSA. And I got to thank you so much once again for support and being a long time, I believe, an old guard and channel legend of the Elite Spring Army, and continuing to help this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. And so what do we got, Matthew, in honor of Con LSA?
All right, and that live chat question is going to go to Canada is Sovereign, who said, is there any intelligence able to track Putin's location or movement?
There is some, but not a great deal. It's really whatever the Russians are comfortable with publishing, and usually that's incredibly rare. So there probably is a way that we have already laid out through the CIA, where we have a series of contacts, or at least informants on the ground that are able to notify the movements of Putin if necessary, and we're also most likely able to track that somewhat decently by satellite as well to some extent, but generally there is no easy way for us here in the United States, at least here in the public like we are, to be able to track the exact movements of Putin. Inside of a dictatorship like the Russian Federation, it's incredibly rare for that information to ever be published, and usually it's published about 10 hours after an event has occurred, meaning that he may be long gone from that area. So technically, for some people, the answer would be yes. But for us here on the channel, unfortunately, the answer would be no. We really have no way to track him efficiently. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, a huge thanks to you once again, Con LSA, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the Western Pacific.
Yes, indeed. So our last one here goes to Mr. Glock Glock, who's there, LSA, who puts in a $20 donation as well. And thank you very much, Mr. Glock Glock, for that support once again. And we do appreciate that very much. And he said to the Corgi Fund and LSA.
And to the Corgi Fund, Glock who's there, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. I got to thank you so much for being a channel legend, Glock who's there, and not only that, supporting this channel and helping it keep on rolling. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to make this thing possible day in and day out, and we wouldn't have been able to get to the news tonight, and for the years well on into the future. I've got to thank you so much once again, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't have been able to keep it rolling tonight. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, it is time for us to move on out of the questions segment and on into the rest of our news, actually moving us on into the Western Pacific, where we've also been able to hear of something quite concerning for U.S. strategic interests within the area. We have actually been able to hear that for the first time in history, the People's Liberation Army Navy has conducted naval exercises within the area of Guam. This is a fairly concerning development, because we were actually able to see that the new data from the Joint Staff, let me make sure that I get this correct here. The Joint Staff of, I don't know who's that is.
Yeah, you were hoping for English and you got Mandarin.
Yeah, I got Mandarin, so unfortunately I can't tell you the exact name right there. But nevertheless, they were able to confirm that the Shandong and Liaoning were in their Western Pacific deployments in an exercise. This is the first time that this has ever been conducted, and this is a wildly concerning one. We've actually been able to see that not only one carrier strike group, but two carrier strike groups, the only two that are currently operational, were both conducting exercises within the Western Pacific. And if you track their movements, you will actually see that one of their movements came incredibly close to Guam. As a matter of fact, there is Guam right down there. It's that weird little shaped island right here that kind of looks like a deformed KFC $5 fill-up or some sort of a chicken wing. That's kind of what it looks like a little bit. You can actually see it right there. And at least according to what we have, the Liaoning actually moved within several hundred miles of Guam in its naval exercises. This is the first time that we've ever seen any Chinese aircraft carriers break out into the open Western Pacific and conduct any kind of naval exercises like these. The Chinese are spreading, or not really spreading their legs, they're more so stretching them. But they're stretching their legs and starting to move into the Western Pacific, which is incredibly concerning. Not only that, but the Shandong was also in the region as well. And let me go pull up, let's see, Chinese Navy ships. That way we can show you all these, because these are almost of the same class. This right here is actually the Shandong, right here in this picture. It is actually a modified Kuznetsov class aircraft carrier that was actually sold to them by the Ukrainians, funnily enough. The Ukrainians had an unfinished hull, and considering that it was the 90s and everyone was broke and poor in Eastern Europe, they sold it to the Chinese to try and get a little bit of money. It turns out the Chinese actually refitted theirs, and it's literally the only actually truly operational Kuznetsov class carrier of its type in the entire world. Not even the Russians really have a running Kuznetsov class carrier. We also know that they have, and I need to go find their aircraft carriers here. They currently have, one's still in sea trials at the moment. That's the Type 3. But the Type 2, well, actually the Type 1, which is the Liaoning, however that's pronounced, is also a Kuznetsov class that's been improved, that is also operating with the People's Republic of China. So these two aircraft carriers, both operational aircraft carriers of the People's Republic of China, were both operational in the Western Pacific, and the Liaoning actually came within several hundred miles of Guam. This is a direct threat to the U.S. Interest within the region, as this is once again showing that the People's Republic of China is massively expanding their naval warfighting abilities to directly affect the island of Guam. And this island doesn't really seem important to most Americans. It's an incredibly small area in the middle of the Pacific, in the literal middle of nowhere. What is the importance of an island like this? Many people would ask. The importance of this island is actually pronounced. This is really the only operational base that we have for the U.S. Navy that isn't inside of Japan or South Korea or the Philippines, which is soon to be in the future, in the entirety of the Pacific. It is actually considered to be our jumping off point for the Pacific, for the large part, for both the Air Force and the Navy. So if these Chinese aircraft carriers are within several hundred miles of this island now, and they're clearly showing that they can operate here, they are directly threatening the U.S. Naval and Air Force presence in the Western Pacific, and our ability to be able to conduct any kind of operations in the outbreak of war in support of Taiwan. Because instead of U.S. forces fighting in support of Taiwan, we would mostly be fighting in defense of Guam instead of Taiwan, meaning that our battles would actually be occurring so far away from Taiwan, we would quite literally be out of range unless we were willing to levy our air assets in Japan and South Korea to try and assist, and that might be a difficult situation, as supply-wise, Japan and South Korea may possibly be isolated in that kind of a conflict, especially considering that with a heavy Chinese air and naval presence within the area hundreds of miles off the shore of Guam, and largely interdicting air, I guess you could say, air supremacy over the Philippine Sea, they may be able to conduct a actual naval blockade of Japan and South Korea, pretty much cutting them off from any external foreign supplies or arms to keep the U.S. forces in this region fighting. This is just a simple naval exercise, but it actually has a lot of severe implications to it, and is directly threatening U.S. interests within the Western Pacific at this moment. We haven't seen an official U.S. response by the U.S. Secretary of State, or the Department of State, or the U.S. Department of Defense at this moment. It appears that they have largely gone moot on this topic and have not stated anything about the Chinese, rather than that we're making progress in the trade talks with them, although there's been no details laid out about what kind of progress that really is. So at this moment, we're kind of a little bit in the dark about that. But moving on from that, we have also been able to hear that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea has stated that they will be producing drones for the Russian Federation. According to the information that we have, North Korea will produce Gerons and Harpy drones for Russia, according to Kirill Budanov. Russia has already transferred Shahed 136 drone production technology to the North Koreans, which could also be used against South Korea. Moscow has also upgraded North Korea's KN-23 missiles, improving their accuracy. KN-23 missiles are quite literally the Iskanders of North Korea. They are literally Iskanders, but of an older variant. And so the Russians have gone in and they've souped them up a little bit extra to try and make them a little bit more accurate and a little bit more efficient. Although I'd say the war in Ukraine has proven those are anything but accurate if we were to assume that they were ever attempting to hit military targets with them. But moving on from that news in the Western Pacific, it is now time for us to circle back and start talking about the news inside of Ukraine. And we have a great deal of it. Also, by the way, I forgot to mention, just a little note, we have also been able to hear that the Secretary of Defense today is trying to state that military funding to Ukraine will be reduced in the future U.S. defense budget. The Secretary of Defense also added, this administration has completely different views on this conflict. We believe peaceful settlement through negotiation serves the interests of both sides and our nation, especially with all competing interests worldwide. Right after we said that if the Russians don't get a peace deal going, there's going to be hell to pay, we're now saying that we're cutting funding for Ukrainian support because the continued attempts at peace talks are what's really going to work. We're going to leave that one for what it is. But we'll move on from that and on into the rest of the news that we have inside of Ukraine, as we were able to hear that a significant drone attack was launched against the state of Ukraine last night, with 479 Shahed drones being launched against the state of Ukraine, making it the largest drone attack of the war and the largest drone attack in world history at this point. We also were able to see that the city of Kyiv had been hit significantly, and while the air defense was able to shoot down a large amount of these drones, a decent amount of drones and missiles still made it through the air defense and hit targets throughout Kyiv. There's been a significant amount of civilian casualties and fatalities as a result of this attack.
That's a lot of smoke, a lot of fires.
Yeah, it's quite a significant amount of fires and quite a large amount of hits that pretty much carpeted the entirety of Kyiv overnight. Moving on from that clip and on into the rest of our news, moving towards the front line, we were able to hear that, at least according to Bild, they have stated that a Ukrainian F-16 supposedly shot down the Russian Su-35. Once again, we heard about this a while ago, but didn't have enough video or picture confirmation to be able to confirm this. And also, I don't really know where Bild is getting the confirmation from, because we have still not heard a statement from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense stating what actually shot down the Su-35. But it appears that everyone is, at this point, running with the story that it was an F-16, and we also were able to hear that apparently a Swedish Saab 340 AWACS aircraft, which has been provided to Ukraine in the past, apparently helped the Ukrainian F-16, once again allegedly, shoot down the Russian Su-35 in Kursk, detecting it from nearly 300 kilometers away and then relaying the coordinates and radar information to the F-16 through a data uplink. We're not entirely sure how credible this information is, because all of this is coming from Bild, and we have not been able to hear any Ukrainian Ministry of Defense reports or picture or video evidence to be able to confirm that there was any F-16s that were in operation of that airspace at that time. But that seems to be the story that everyone's running with at this point. Meanwhile, we did get to see that the Ukrainians are continuing bombing operations against the Russian forces in Tekhino and dropping AAS M250 hammers onto the Russian positions below. Significant hits, no doubt. Moving on from that and on to the area of the Kursk Oblast, we also got to see the Ukrainians hitting and knocking out Russian forces. In the 225th Assault Regiment, we were actually able to see them knock out a Tiger armored car, which is incredibly rare at this point in the war. We can see them flying it right on in, literally flying around the Tiger to get to the front hood, and then slamming right down through the open hatch and taking it on out. You can see the dust blowing out of the building, which means that the Ukrainians are doing spring cleaning in there.
The whole building kind of lifted and shook when they did that.
And we see them now flying it into the dash and putting some armor all on the dash. Or as we would call it, putting Pyrodex on the dash, it more so seems. And we now see the vehicle burning to cinders inside of that little garage. Very unfortunate for them. Very fortunate for us, though. That's the end of that clip. And moving on from that and on into our next bit of news, we also were able to hear inside the area of Kursk that the Ukrainians were also continuing to hit Russian forces within the area. That's actually a duplicate, so we're going to be deleting that. Moving on from that and down into our location unknowns, we also were able to see that the Ukrainians are now introducing a new vehicle to their service, the Varda 2. It's actually gone through combat testing, and it is an incredibly interesting system. Basically, it's a cheaper form of a BTR-4. It uses the exact same turret as the BTR-4, but it's mounted on top of, I believe, a Kazakh or a Varda armored car, pretty much meaning that it has the firepower of a heavy infantry fighting vehicle, but the mobility, speed, and lighter armor of a Varda 2 MRAP. It's a very interesting kind of a combination. We'll most likely see these being introduced into the front in limited numbers over the future, but still, it's an incredibly interesting kind of a development, and once again showing that the Ukrainians are trying to create a more mobile, lean, and cheaper force to be able to try and stretch their dollars as far as they can, and to be able to make sure that they are able to make the war effort a lot more affordable on their end than the Russians are able to make it on their other end. Outside of that, we also are able to see some additional news of a Ukrainian Su-27 flanker dropping some glide bombs, although that clip was unfortunately deleted. We also got to see a prisoner exchange that occurred today on June 10th, which apparently was once again conducted between the Russians and the Ukrainians. A lot of Ukrainian prisoners that were released by the Russian Federation have shown signs of torture and other crimes against humanity and war crimes that were conducted against them while they were in captivity. Incredibly unfortunate thing. We can see them draping the prisoners of war with flags of their units or flags of the state of Ukraine as they're exiting the vehicle finally free after an incredibly long time in Russian captivity. It's always nice to see this, because once again, it does mean that more Ukrainian soldiers are finally free. But of course, a lot of them have gone through horrors in the prisoner of war camps that honestly could rival or trump a lot of the horrors that they went through in the actual fighting itself.
It's just really horrible what the Russians are doing to these guys in these camps. Like, they come out totally emaciated, like not fed properly, tortured, like you said. It's just terrible. Like, really. Luckily, these guys look like they generally came out okay from the looks of it.
Yeah, luckily, most of them did come out okay, although I did see that one guy, I don't think I can describe that one. I think that'd be a little bit too graphic for YouTube. I think YouTube would actually come down on me for that one. But moving on from that, we did get to see the Russian casualty report here as well. And look, there was one Bobcat! Hey!
One Bobcat's good, sir. I love to see it. I tell you what, I love to see it. But tell us more.
And Ms. Dees, keeper of the record, stated that the armed forces of Ukraine struck Savaslyka airfield. A MiG-31 and an Su-34 were destroyed. That accounts for the 2 aircraft that were lost. 239 drones destroyed is the 6th highest daily loss, and it finally totals over 40,000 drones destroyed, which is an unbelievable number of drones that have been knocked out by Ukraine so far. Outside of that, we have been able to see that 960 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 9 APCs, 107 supply trucks, 4 main battle tanks, 48 artillery pieces, 239 drones, 1 MLRS, 2 aircraft, 15 cruise missiles, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, it actually was a pretty decent day, and hopefully we'll be able to see that the Ukrainian armed forces continue to inflict decent casualties onto the Russians and hold them at bay. Outside of that, moving further on down and into the area of Seversk, we also get to see the Ukrainians targeting and destroying a 2S-43 Malva. These are brand new SPGs that have been produced by the Russian Federation, once again trying to work off of the mobile pretty much attached wheeled artillery piece, a model that's been operated by the French and multiple other countries over the past 10 years. We can actually see the Ukrainians destroying this rare icon of the modernized Russian army, which only exists really on paper. Outside of that, we also got to see some additional clips from the area of Seversk as the Ukrainian armed forces were repelling another Russian assault in the area. It looks like these Russians may be on motorbikes or dirt bikes of some kind, but the Ukrainians do not care. They're about to motor them straight to hell. And we can see that that's about to be happening here quite soon. When you see them bringing the FPV drone down, they're giving them naps. Long naps. Real naps. Long-lasting naps. And we see them dropping another bomblet right there. And that was a bullseye, quite literally, on a moving target from several hundred feet away. That's pretty impressive right there. We can also see them hitting another Russian soldier who was trying to hide with his dirt bike. Everyone knows that you're not supposed to hide with the dirt bikes. They're dirty, and they're also bikes. We can also see them here hitting another Russian soldier. And we see the Russians trudging on through the fields. And we see them dropping bomblets once again onto the Russians below. So far, they've actually been pretty effective at knocking out Russian forces within the Seversk area, as we've seen practically no frontline changes since the Russians have attempted a light offensive in this area, and it has been ongoing for nearly a year at this point.
Oh.
I mean, goodness gracious. You can see
Oh, look, what are they doing? Getting led to the Ukrainians, I guess, or something?
I'm not really sure. The drone's just watching them at this point, but let's see if they're surrendering. Can't really tell what those guys were doing because they never made it anywhere. They were just walking at the end. But moving on from that and out of that clip in the Seversk area and further on down towards Chasiv Yar, we also got to see the 5th Assault Brigade taking down a brand new V2U AI-controlled kamikaze drone. These are incredibly new to the Russian drone forces, and this is actually the first one that we've ever seen on film being taken down.
This is also extremely clear footage, like some of the clearest I've ever seen.
It's a shame that it's on a drone that's going to blow up right there. Like, it's like, honestly, that was a pretty nice camera. But moving on from that, and out of that little bit of news, we are also going to be moving on down to Andriivka, where we also got to see the continued destruction of Russian forces. But apparently, that was a little too spicy, so we won't be able to show that to y'all. Moving all the way down and into the area of Robotine, we also got to see a MiG-29 conducting precision airstrikes once again with the AASM-250 hammers provided by the French Republic. Oh, look, did that guy just nab a drone? Look at this, Matthew. He came out and he went yoink, and they got to know they were in there.
Oh, man. He snatched it and took it like he was stealing. Oh, look at that.
Man, I don't think he's going to be snatching nothing no more.
He stole a spicy meatball that he probably should not have stolen.
Dang! Okay, well, his outpost is gone. It's completely destroyed. Bro, he said, oh, look, a drone, yoink. And then the Ukrainians went, oh, look, a hammer, yoink. And then just dropped it right down on top of him.
You shouldn't steal, comrade. You should not steal.
Man, theft is wrong, and theft is, and also property is theft, so the Russians will be going to commie prison. We also got to hear that apparently some sort of a troop concentration was hit in the rear near Melitopol, Berdyansk, in the occupied Kherson regions. We were not able to confirm the losses beyond this Russian telegram post, so we're still waiting for picture and video evidence for final confirmation on that story. Wanted to make sure to run it by y'all right now just to get it out of the way, but once again, we're not reporting that as full-on news yet. However, we also were able to hear down in the area of Saki, at the Saki airfield, that the Russians are still rushing to build concrete air shelters. Now, we can see that they're starting to rapidly build these things, and it makes you wonder, how sound are these in their construction? They are putting these things up like they're literally tents, but they're made out of concrete. So I don't really know how well these things would stand up to a drone attack of any kind, especially if it has any significant ordnance, because to put up a concrete shelter like that quickly, I'm assuming that the concrete hasn't even set, or the other thing is that they're probably not incredibly sound, or they don't really have a lot of concrete to them to provide any sort of armor protection. So a little bit interesting with that, but we're starting to see these a great deal. We can also see these Orion drones all hanging out here at the Saki Air Base as well, which is a little bit unique in its own right. But moving on out of that, and on into the area of Snake Island, I believe it was called, which doesn't have any snakes on it. It's actually Nizhny Island, which I have a very hard time pronouncing. But we actually got to see the Russians were flying a drone around it, and the Ukrainians have armored this thing up. It actually has a significant amount of air defense on this island. It doesn't appear that they spotted the drone, but it does appear that the island is still being inhabited by Ukrainian forces and protected by their force of arms for the large part.
The big hand that comes with the picture is a great addition.
Look at this, look at this. And I was like, man, thanks for pointing out exactly what the camera's literally focused on. And we see them pointing it out right there. Pointing at it again. Yes, Matthew, yes, I keep, for some reason, man, I'm always like, man, I'll get through with this, and then we'll get to it, and then I just completely forget, and then move on to the next thing, so we'll get it after this clip right here. We will guarantee it. But we can see them here showing the Snake Island area. And that's the end of the clip. But moving on from that and on into the actual question that we have for all of y'all. And this actually started a while ago, and for some reason I just kept on forgetting to get back to it. So we're going to circle back to it right now. Because, as many of y'all know, at the very beginning of our Ukraine news coverage from inside of Ukraine, Russia did launch its largest drone attack so far in the war. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on that so far. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So it looks like a lot of people, about 43%, said this was the big retaliation that everybody was worried about, that Russia was going to carry out sometime in the last couple of days or maybe the next few days. This largest drone attack of the war was the big retaliation, while 40% said this was just another large attack, just a normal, usual attack, while 12% said it seems like a prelude to something larger. And honestly, I think this was the large attack. This was the largest drone attack of the Ukraine war so far that Russia carried out mainly on Kyiv. And as you can see from the video, the damage was quite extensive. It looks like they overwhelmed the defense systems in Kyiv. And even though the damage wasn't as bad as it could have been, I think that was the big thing that the United States was warning Kyiv about the entire time, was that attack. So I think that might be the worst of it, hopefully. And hopefully there's nothing beyond that that gets even more severe. But I think that could have been it. And I'm with the 44%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I believe that this is the major retaliation. These are the largest drone attacks that we've heard of in the war's history so far, and considering that it sounds as though all of their attempts at IRBM and ICBM launches failed, this does appear to be their major response to Operation Spiderweb, which only consists of drones and missiles. So not as large as we were originally thinking it would be in terms of escalatory, in terms of escalatory developments, to put it that way. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And moving on up into Odessa, we also get to see the Ukrainians shooting down some drones around the city. All right, we're going to be muting that. I don't even know what that noise was. But they did just clip the wing off of a Shahed right there. It's actually going into a flat spin. Look at it go. Right down to the sea.
That thing. It's going right down.
Right down into the sea, right there. And we can see them lining up another, firing at it. And that one actually blew up. We now see them targeting another one, laying down a significant burst, and actually clipping its wing as well, and throwing it off its trajectory and on down to the ground, on into the drink more so. It's actually going into the Black Sea down there. We now see them targeting and firing at another Russian Shahed, and it appears that this one actually had some of its control systems knocked out and also went down into the drink, actually exploding on impact from the sheer speed. But that's the end of the clip, and impressive to see the air defense operating around Odessa and actually hitting and shooting down drones with a near surgical-like precision right there, considering that a lot of these systems are actually hand-guided that we're watching. But with that, it is time for us to also show you something else neat up in Pripyat. We were actually able to see some Ukrainians training in the Chernobyl exclusion zone in Pripyat. A little bit of an interesting training ground. Of course, the radiation is largely residual in this area and doesn't really exist that badly anymore. But it appears that they're now using the grounds for training. So that's pretty wild. I never thought we'd see that, but hey, I guess you know, wartime brings out crazy kinds of things like that. But anyways, it's now time for us to move on to Kyiv and cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day. Oh, he's starting a little too quickly there. Here on day 2003 of the war. So without, well, actually 1,203 of the war. Correction there. And so with that, here is the speech. Peach!
Дорогі українці, українки, сьогодні ще один день обмінів. Повернули хлопців з пораненнями. Серед них і дуже важкі. Це воїни з різних складових сил оборони. Усі вони потребують серйозної медичної допомоги. Обов'язково всю підтримку надамо. Розраховуємо на продовження обмінів, і щодо цього будуть окремі повідомлення обов'язково. Завдання знайти всіх наших в російському полоні і всіх звільнити. Дякую кожному, хто нам допомагає. І також хочу подякувати всім політичним діячам, громадським лідерам, кожному медійнику, усім, хто поширює інформацію про російські удари по наших містах, по наших селах. Це життєво необхідно, щоб не було мовчання у відповідь на російську ескалацію. Це очевидно, що є ескалація. Росія протягом вже місяців постійно збільшує кількість засобів ураження в ударах. Це стійка тенденція, і це означає, що в Москві не бояться нікого у світі, нікого із тих, хто закликав до припинення вбивств та змістовних перемовин про закінчення війни. Путін хоче вбивати і надалі, і користується тим, що не отримує сильну відповідь. Вашингтон вони не чують, і це багато про що говорить світові, усім. Важливий крок Єврокомісії – анонсовано новий санкційний пакет. Я дякую, що зосереджений цей 18-й пакет на російських енергоресурсах і банках. Правильний напрямок для тиску. Але ще потрібно наповнити цей пакет сильними деталями. Здатність Росії продовжувати війну дорівнює здатності продавати їхню нафту і обходити фінансові бар'єри. А саме тому треба максимально обмежувати російський танкерний флот, їхні технологічні можливості видобутку і переробки, а також робити все, щоб ціна російської нафти була нижче, ніж вони можуть витримати. Кожен з партнерів знає, який прайскеп потрібен. $30, не вище. Такий ціновий рівень означатиме реальний тиск на Росію. Вони мають бути змушені шукати миру. Інших мотивів там не розуміють. Я знаю, що партнери зараз обговорюють компромісну ціну, досить компромісів з Росією. Кожен такий компроміс – це відкладання миру. Ми просимо реально знизити ціну на російську нафту. Тобто реально наблизити закінчення війни. Особливо я хочу подякувати тим у Сполучених Штатах Америки, хто робить ставку саме на силу, в тому числі на силу дипломатії через санкції. Сьогодні були доповіді військових, окремо говорила з міністром оборони Умєровим про нашу протидію дронам, про захист від ракет, про наше зміцнення ППО. Росіяни знов застосували ракети з Північної Кореї, балістику. Бачимо дані і щодо поширення в Північну Корею російсько-іранських дронових технологій. І це максимально небезпечно і для Європи, і для регіону Східної та Південно-Східної Азії. Чим довше триває ця війна на нашій землі, тим більше зміняться технології бойових дій. І тим більше для всіх зросте загроза. На це треба реагувати зараз, а не тоді, коли тисячі вдосконалених шахедів та балістичних ракет почнуть загрожувати Сеулу і Токіо. Ще одне. Сьогоднішній російський удар пошкодив звичайні житлові будинки в різних регіонах України. В Одесі був пошкоджений пологовий будинок. Значні втрати на Одеській кіностудії. Десятиліття історії. В столиці була пошкоджена навіть Софія Київська. Через вибухову хвилю обвалилася частина фасаду собору. Для всіх людей, хто дійсно знає історію, хто не чужий християнству, будь-яка навіть загроза пошкодження чи руйнації Софії – це абсолютно неприпустима річ, катастрофічна, але не для Росії. Біснуваті з шахедами та червоною кнопкою. І саме катастрофи є сенсом їхнього існування. Більш нічого вони не продукують і по собі нічого іншого не залишать. Треба на це реагувати, треба їх зупиняти, і це не тільки нам в Україні треба. Весь світ виграє від примусу Росії до миру. Дякую всім, хто з України. Слава Україні!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1203 of the news. And that is going to be moving us on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, what a fun segment it is. We get to talk about literally anything and everything. Anything under the sun, as long as it isn't religion or politics. And I know that some people are going to say, oh, Enforcer, you broke the political rule by, criticizing the president. But hey, something that's crazy, folks, is that we criticize everyone fairly. It actually falls under a no politics rule, crazily enough, because you know who made the no politics rule? I did. Back before really most people were here. Back before Matthew was even working on the channel. I laid out what the no politics rule is. And I generally try and make sure that we fall within my interpretation of the no politics rule. It's been that way for 1,203 days. And I'm going to promise y'all something, that if I'm criticizing current U.S. action by a current U.S. administration, it is as neutral as it can possibly be and with your best interests at heart. So I hope that does address that well. To all those people who say that I'm either funded by the GOP or I'm funded by the deep state or whatever whoever the hell it is, the lizard people, George Soros, whatever. No, that's not the case. But beyond that, we are going to be moving into getting to talk to all of y'all. And hopefully, a lot of those people have been weeded out by Enforcer Matt's incredible man hammer. That thing was swinging tonight. And I was like, damn, look at him go. I was like, call Matthew a carpenter. The way that hammer was swinging. I mean, he was putting the nails in.
I tell you what, I was building buildings and knocking them down at the same time, I tell you.
And that just came on top of us, almost getting shot today. Hey! Oh, man, the funness, the fun of living in the state of Alabama, folks. You go out for a drive to go look at some airplanes, and you can't get out of the roundabout because there's a literal traffic jam, and then someone tries to get out and shoot you. Isn't it just crazy? I wish we had gotten some of that guy's personal information so we could have called into the workplace that he was probably trying to clock into, so that way we could have told them what kind of a lunatic, literally mentally deranged lunatic they had working for him. Like, no joke, folks. We almost had a gun pulled on us, and we were almost shot today because we got into a traffic jam, couldn't move, and the guy behind us wanted us to move. No joke. That's what the whole road rage thing started over, and the guy actually whipped open his glove box and was going to pull out a gun and shoot us over it. You just can't make that kind of stuff up. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into the questions. Now that I've been able to tell y'all our fun adventure of the day. Living in Alabama is like living in Ukraine. Like, at one moment you could just be sitting there. Next thing you know, you hear some high-pitched whining of some bastard in his truck. And then the next thing you know, there's gunshots coming your way. I mean, it's really crazy. Anyways, what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
All right, so jumping into our final question segment of the night, and also I see people they're in disbelief. They're like, oh my God, what happened? Yeah, it's crazy. Alabama is honestly a hellhole to live in. I'm not going to lie. I know some people will try to pretend like it's good. Maybe for some people it is good depending on where you live, but it's like a very small percentage of people that like living in Alabama. Alabama sucks. I'm not going to sugarcoat it one bit. But anyways, jumping into our first live chat question or super chat of the last segment here. This one goes to Blue Flam 777 LSA, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, good sir, for that generous support. And we do appreciate that very much. Longtime channel legend right there. And he said, my granny is dangerous. It seems she has bigger balls than some and wears combat boots in the shower just to piss some off. LTLSA in question to the chat.
And I'd have to say, I wouldn't want to mess with your grandmother. Anyone who's wearing combat boots in the shower is not only someone not to be trifled with, but may have some slight issues. Because I would never have soggy boots with me in the shower and wearing them. Like, that would be crazy right there. But I do thank you for the massive support and help with this channel to keep on running, Blue Flam 777. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And also, I got to say a huge thanks to you once again for being an old guard and a channel legend and supporting this channel tonight. Because folks like you help us to keep this thing possible. You've actually helped us for years now to be able to say what we say on air every single day and every single night. And it's really something to think that we can really thank all of y'all for making that possible. We have been able to say whatever we've wanted to. We have not been beholden to any kind of a political bias. We've never been beholden to really sponsors. We've never really been beholden to much of anything. We have always been able to do exactly what we all wanted to hear and what we wanted to say every single night. And it's been thanks to folks like you, Blue Flam, that's been possible. We are really the only channel out there that extrapolates information through an objective lens and actually speaks of analysis like that. There are very few channels out there that could say day that they criticized the current administration's foreign policy actions and the prior administration's foreign policy actions. Quite literally, I don't think there's any out there. Pretty much everyone else who's in the sphere has really taken a side, and so they sugarcoat everything that one side does, and then they demonize literally everything that the other side does. It's really interesting to see that we continue to live in a very politicized world at this point, where you can't have objective analysis and say that someone has done something that's not great because their cult-like supporters will come out of the woodwork, no matter who it is, and then they'll come and attack you. And it's just great to know that the Lee Spring Army and all the folks here on the channel have continued to support us and help us to make this thing run possible every day, so that we can make sure to keep on saying unbiased analysis. So you know, that's why I got to thank you massively for that, and we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. And so, Matthew, what do we got in honor of Blue Flam 777?
All right, so Blue Flam's live chat question is sponsoring. It goes to Alan Deshane, who said, if Russia hasn't used a nuke in Ukraine, why would their threats even be credible?
Their threats would be credible because that would be a major conflict that actually would threaten the existence of the state. And also, you have to assume at some point that a nuclear-armed country, especially if you're pushing them back in counteroffensives rapidly back into their own country and through their own country, is going to start using nuclear weapons. You're practically pushing the envelope at that point that it will happen, and then you will have to respond in turn with nuclear weapons. So that's generally the reason why you would have to believe it. Yes, it's true that they haven't used nuclear weapons against Ukraine, but there's still a decent argument that Ukraine has never created a true existential threat for the Russian state. Going up against NATO and the military machine that it is, and then having say St. Petersburg encircled and besieged, and then also other forces racing towards Moscow, that would truly be an existential threat to the Russian state that has never before been seen. And it's very likely to say that nuclear weapons would be pulled out in that kind of a situation. It's really likely to say if Russian forces start to get pushed back rapidly, even inside of a Baltic state or Poland, that they may also whip out nuclear weapons then, because it may look like there's an entire armed collapse that is happening inside the Russian armed forces. So that's why those kinds of threats would be taken seriously with Russia starting conventional war with NATO, whether they could win or not, while in other instances, like with Ukraine, it's very dubious or really questionable if they'd ever use a nuclear weapon at all. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and I thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Blue Flame 777, we would have never been able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't have been able to be here, right now, covering the news tonight, which is an absolutely incredible thing to know that we continue to be able to do. So a huge thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Jackie B, who puts in a $30 donation, and thank you very much, Jackie B, as well for that support and also helping to keep the channel running. And let's see here. Now, they said Iran was in compliance with the nuclear deal, and the last U.S. administration got us out of the deal. And if that individual hadn't done that, we would not be where we are now.
I thank you for the support, but that is pretty much not the case. That's kind of it's actually not the case at all. Iran was not in compliance with the nuclear deal. I actually see that you mentioned the last president by name. There was no nuclear deal while the last president was in office for him to rescind. What you're actually thinking about is the withdrawal of the JCPOA, or the rescission of the JCPOA that was created by Obama under Trump. So that actually was done under the current president in his last term in office. That's actually the reality of it. Now, that's not to say that the blame all lies on him, because really, to be entirely honest, the blame lies on all three of them together, at least from what I can see. The JCPOA was incredibly weak and was practically unenforceable, and we now have information to clearly show that they were still operating their centrifuges and enriching uranium to a weapons grade even during the JCPOA. They were just hiding that from U.S. nuclear inspectors the entire time. The president that is currently in office, who was in office during 2016 to 2020, then rescinded the JCPOA completely, and then did nothing to rectify the issue of Iran possibly nuclearizing. Then the prior administration, which was Biden, he also did nothing at all. He quite literally did nothing to deal with the situation, either trying to talk to them through diplomatic negotiations or through force of arms. And then the current administration has now decided that we've squandered about 10 years at this point, and the Iranians have been nuclearizing steadily through those 10 years, either through their presidency or other presidencies, and we've now decided at the 11th hour, while they're almost about to get a nuclear weapon, that now it's time to just pretend like they're still back in 2015, and it's time to get into some talks. That's really the reality of it. It's like, I'm not one, like, I can see that you put it in all caps and it's kind of like trying to play the political blame game, like, oh, those damn Dems or those damn GOP people. The reality is that it was really all of them combined, because the U.S. has no appetite for risk or any appetite for possible conflict, even when it would be appropriate. It's such a sad thing to see that when we watch people like Iran directly threatening this country, the responses that I see some people make, which are just completely unfounded in reality, is the enforcers are funded by Israel, like it's only threatening Israel, like them getting nuclear weapons wouldn't threaten us in the future. Or I see something like the enforcers are warmongers, when this is really the only choice we have left. I wouldn't like to go to war, but I'm also not going to be a coward to the point I'm going to get a million Americans put under the gun of a nuclear bomb being fired at them at any point. I'm also seeing that some people will say stuff like, Iran isn't our problem, that's Israel's problem. Like they don't realize that we live in a modern world where a nuclear missile fired from Iran, an ICBM, could reach the United States in about 20 to 25 minutes after launch. So it's not really like this is the Revolutionary War and we're thousands of miles away from the king and, we're trying to become our own country. It's quite truly the fact of the matter. These people are quite literally a half hour away from killing a couple of million Americans if they fired off a missile. And people just don't get that. This isn't a political thing. This is a matter of national security. This is a matter of great strategic importance, not only for us at home here in the States, but also for our interests in the Middle East and making sure that the United States is still able to control and pretty much drive the destiny of the Middle East into the future, however we needed that to turn out. A lot of people don't realize that, and I don't know why. I think it's a lack of education on the matter, because it's just really interesting to see a lot of people have very misinformed understandings and interpretations of what we're doing and why we're doing things, when it's not that at all. But I do thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. But really, the blame doesn't like I gotta make this clear. This is something that a lot of people don't know, is that the blame doesn't fall entirely on one president or one political party when we talk about really anything. It is more so a series of actions that has been taken over at least a decade or more in most instances that have led to what we see today. In every single situation, it's not really a failing of the Republicans or the Democrats. It's actually a failing of them all. Because if you look at Ukraine started in 2014. Now, I'm going to pretty much hope that all of y'all know who was the president in 2014. I'm pretty sure you all know. But in 2014, when the Russians invaded the Donbass and then annexed Crimea, what was their response? It was practically none. Once again, the U.S. didn't have an appetite for any kind of risk to protect our interests in Eastern Europe or to protect the Ukrainians from now what was clearly becoming Russian aggression. Then from 2016 to 2020, once again, really nothing was done. There was some token support that was provided to Ukraine in the form of tow Humvees, and then that was about it. And then from 2020 to 2024, there was nothing done to stop the war in Ukraine from happening. There was actually a moment in time where we could have actually forced the Russians to get to the negotiating table before the actual ground confrontation began, and that would have involved a large U.S. armed response in Eastern Europe against the Russians, and then to say this is going to turn into World War unless we get to the negotiating table, and that would have pretty much stopped the Russians right then and there from invading Ukraine and having the situation that we see right now. And then after that went by and the war started, we then lightly support them, and it's more so of a trickle than anything. And then under the current administration, we're now seeing that we're practically just going to try and ignore the situation, and although the Russians are clearly hell-bent on total domination and moving further on into realizing their ambitions throughout the rest of Eastern Europe, we're going to pretend like appeasing them or just ignoring the situation is what's going to work. And so if you look at that from really any direction, it's not a failing of one president or the other, which is what a lot of people can't get through their minds because they're so obsessed with the political Kool-Aid they're drinking. They can't think outside the box like that to where both parties are equally to blame for something. They just look at it as, I have to have a fall guy, and considering that I'm either party A or party B, it's going to be the other guy in the other party that I'm going to blame. And that's just never the case with these sorts of things. Like, it's much more complex than anyone could ever see. Honestly, every single situation that we're looking at around the world has either been poor decisions over a decade or decades, plural, with both political parties in the United States being president or having a majority control of the House and Senate at the same time over that entire period. And so there's really no way to actually be, if you're actually analyzing these things truthfully, inherently political, because there is no politicized answer to any of this. It quite truly is, everyone's mismanaging the situation. It's really not even a failing of a party. It's more so a failing of a train of thought in the United States. That's really what it is. And honestly, I would say that I feel like a lot of people ought to be taking a little bit more responsibility for this stuff in the voter base, because it's not the failing of the president that pretty much all the past three presidents have been weak. It's really more so a failing of the American voter that we keep voting in weak people. That's how I more so look at it, because I know that there's a lot of kind of like rigging and hanky-panking that goes on in the background, but still, if the citizenry was just a little bit smarter, which might be asking for a lot these days, because I don't really think you could get any more to the bottom of the barrel than this, but if they were just a little bit smarter, and they actually would elect people that were boring, and that focused on the nitty-gritty, and had a dynamic way of dealing with situations, and going into things with a different approach on a case-by-case basis, we actually would have a lot more of an effective government than we have right now. Because I feel like it's a little bit ridiculous, to be entirely honest with folks, that we continue to try and blame things on politicians when that representative that's been in the House of Representatives for 40 years isn't in there for 40 years because they are refusing to leave. They keep getting elected in every 2 years by the same constituents for 40 straight years. There doesn't even have to be term limits to stop these people from being in the House of Representatives or the Senate, or the people that you don't like from being in the White House or anything else for that matter, like they are. It just simply would take a decision of the voters, and the voters are so blind to really the reality of their situation. They keep on asking for politicians to change the situation when really the voters themselves can change the situation within their own votes. So, you know, it's a little bit interesting with that, to be entirely honest. So I thank you for the support. I hope you see where I'm coming from there. And I also hope that a lot of people see that my frustrations with the president tonight aren't necessarily political in nature, although a lot of people like to take it to that, because people these days have been pretty much brainwashed, where if you have a criticism of their political party, even if you do that against every political party, then you're inherently against them, and you're political against them, and you're working on an agenda to destroy them. The reality is that this guy right now is coming in on the pinnacle, or the apex more so, of about a decade of bad decisions that have dealt with Iran. He's been a part of it now for about 4.5 years at this point. And it's been terrible decisions across the board by everyone, not just with Ukraine, but with Iran, with North Korea, with Taiwan, with really all of our adversaries around the world. It's just it's something, though, that gets me incredibly annoyed here towards the end, because while there was time, you could largely just try and say logical points and say, look, we need to do this and we need to do that, and it could be a lot more it could be a lot more expounded upon and more controlled, because we weren't at the literal end moments. Right now, this guy is dealing with a situation with Iran that's at its literal end moment. Forgetting what anyone else did for the past 10 years, he's here right now when Iran's about to make a nuke. So it really comes down to him at this point. He's pretty much the last failsafe to stop them from getting a nuke. And if he doesn't, really, honestly, the way the cookie crumbles is that the blame will fall on him, no matter how incompetent everyone else has been for the past 10 years. Because right now, at this very moment, there's one last chance to stop them, and we're practically pissing it away. So that's kind of the real lay of the land from where I'm seeing it, from as apolitical a stance as I can take. But still, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Rye Guy SR, who puts in a $20 donation. Thank you very much, Rye Guy, for that support, and we do appreciate that. He said, another great stream, guys, and take one from the chat, and LLTLSA, long live the Republic, and slava Ukraine.
And long live the Republic, long live the Lee Spring Army, and a huge thanks to you so much once again, Rye Guy SR, for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, and thank you for enjoying another great stream. We try our best to make sure that the news is good every night, and the folks like you who support this channel and help us to keep it running make this thing possible. So a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we will make sure to take one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Jenkins USA from the live chat, who said, can NATO act without America?
NATO can technically act without the United States, but it would be a little bit difficult to do that. They pretty much would just have to say, okay, we're just going to pretty much pretend like NATO is just us and not the United States, and then move on that way. So technically they can, but it would be a little bit more difficult. Actually, let me go check the NATO Charter. Or as I called it one time, the NATO Charticle. So let me go check out the treaty. Let's see here. Article 5. The parties agree that, let's see, agree that an exercise will assist the parties individually such action as it deems necessary. Let's see, Article 4. Article 6. Let's see, Article 9. The parties hereby establish a council. The council shall be organized as to meet promptly at any time, set by subsidiary bodies. The parties may, let's see. So I don't really know how the vote works, and I don't really see any explanation of it, at least here at this point, about how their vote works for the invocation of war in NATO. I know that we actually invoked NATO Article 5 during 9/11. The entirety of NATO did. But I don't really know how that vote works. I don't know if it's a unanimous thing or a overwhelming majority or a simple majority that would get NATO into a state of war for its common defense. I'm not entirely sure on that, and it doesn't really look like it lays it out. But Matthew, do you have any answers to that question? Do you know anything about how NATO votes on Article 5 or the invocation of it?
Generally speaking, I think any member state can invoke a vote. Well, first of all, they have to invoke Article 4, to my understanding. That's the convention of NATO. Once they all assemble, then they can assemble a vote of the member states, and then they can take action. America does not have like preferential status or something just because they're, I guess you could say, the figurehead of NATO. Now, they do exact some indirect power, which with finances and things like that, which can give them a little bit extra power, but it's not supposed to in practice, though. So they all have an equal vote. So if all the countries decide to do something without the Americans involved in it, then America either has to go along with the vote, the majority, or they can leave NATO if they want to. That's the bottom line. So it's supposed to be a fair system where every party is equal. It's not supposed to be unequal toward America or anything. So in theory, they could, but in reality, though, would a country go against America? Probably not. Because that could either cause America to leave or it could cause America to retaliate against that country if they really want to be that petty.
So it appears that, according to TG Butter, the AI answer is that Article 5 actually requires a unanimous decision by all member states. That seems, let me check.
Are you sure about that?
NATO Article 5 vote process. Because it seems like that would be an incredibly cumbersome system. Let's see. Interesting. So each ally votes on whether or not to invoke it, casting a veto if they choose, and then each decides their response. So it's a very loose kind of an alliance. You could actually just veto it and just say, nah, I'm not doing that, and then just pretty much not be involved. So quite literally any country could do that. So that's interesting. So technically the U.S. could just veto and just sit it out and still be a part of NATO, actually.
Let's see here. I was doing some research here for a second real quick. Let's see here. It states that if one NATO member is attacked, it's considered an attack on all, and each member is obligated to take actions it deems necessary to assist the attacked member. Now, the problem is, though, the Article 5 literally says if one is attacked, then it's considered an attack upon all. So if one party says, we want to invoke Article 5, we were attacked by an enemy, and obviously Article 5 is all about collective defense, one party can't just come in and say, I'm not going to honor that. That's violating the article itself at that point. So I get the fact that it's supposed to be a consensus, but it kind of goes in contrast to the whole idea of Article 5, which is that if one's attacked, everybody's attacked, and we have to defend that country. So that seems to be a bit of a conflict there. I think we might be misunderstanding something because that doesn't make much sense.
We might be misunderstanding something, but it actually appears, at least according to the AI, there is no formal voting process to invoke Article 5. So it might actually be the case, because it looks like everyone's kind of saying there really is no actual legal framework to the invocation of Article 5. Just kind of like everyone just meets, and then they go, okay, this is what it is, and then some people can just opt out. It looks like that might actually be the reality of how Article 5 works. So that's interesting. Because that quite literally means the U.S. could just opt out. And also, who's going to enforce that against the United States? Like, if we break the charter and then we say we're not going to war, although Article 5 has been invoked, there's really nothing that can be done against the United States unless if the European Union and Canada wanted to levy sanctions against the United States as a response to that.
Okay, so I understand now. Like, here's why we're not understanding. So Article 5 is intentionally worded vague, according to experts. It's worded vague on purpose because it says in Article 5, such action as it deems necessary, including the use of armed force. So it doesn't commit the member states of NATO to necessarily go to war to protect the country. It simply demands some form of response. So the response could be, starting a war against the enemy state. That could be one response in the most extreme capacity, or it could be as simple as we're going to issue strong words, and that's going to be our response under Article 5. It could literally be that wide of a spectrum. So that's why it doesn't make sense, because the ambiguity is apparently deliberate. So that way it gives an out to countries. So effectively, Article 5 is useless, to be perfectly honest with you, if you look at it from that angle. It requires good faith of all parties for Article 5 to actually work. If the good faith isn't there, kind of like we're seeing in the modern day, then Article 5 becomes extremely watered down.
Yeah, so that actually does mean that the U.S. could just choose to not respond, really, and still be in NATO. So, really, to be honest, the NATO charter, thinking of it that way, it's actually quite weak. No one's really compelled to respond to anything.
Yeah, it's kind of honestly kind of weak, but it's only weak though when you have parties acting out of bad faith. That's the only time it's weak. Up until now, most people have understood that if Article 5 is ever invoked, it's extremely serious, and that means we need to all band together and become strong allies, like the whole intention was from the get-go. So that's why it's so important to have allies and also leaders within NATO that understand the importance of actually maintaining the deterrence factor of Article 5. Because if you don't have it, then at least according to what the experts are saying and breaking down the language, Article 5 becomes, barely worth the paper it's written on.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting. And also, I see someone saying the EU is not politically divided on the situation with Ukraine. I don't really know where you're getting that from, Nazar, but every single country, any major one in Europe right now, is entirely on board with going to war with Russia if necessary in their defense. That's the French, the British, the Germans, the Polish, the Italians, I believe also the Spanish, the Czechs, the Slovakians, and the Hungarians are the only hang-ups. But everyone else is perfectly on board with the idea that they may have to go to war with Russia if they need to, even including Turkey. So saying that the EU, which also isn't really a part of NATO, it's more so a completely different thing, is politically hung up on that sort of a topic, that doesn't really make too much sense. Because I have a feeling that if the Russian scythe of death started sweeping away the Baltics, I'm pretty sure everyone in Europe would start to band together, because, people don't sit there and point political fingers at each other as they're literally being eaten alive by a foreign adversary. That usually doesn't happen. So I hope that addresses that somewhat well, at least from what we know right now. And I do thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running and sponsoring a live chat question, which has actually led us to a very interesting revelation on, revelation, I believe it is, on stream, which is that the NATO Charter actually is hardly anything at all, really, in reality. It's almost like the UN Charter. It really doesn't mean much of anything in practice, if no one wants to follow along with it. That's going to be interesting. And I got to tell you, it's a little bit concerning at this point, because with how the U.S. acts on things, it's pretty likely that we could just watch even NATO, which at least up until this point was such a unified force, pretty much become halved in its power, that we pretty much see that we are ushering in an era of unpredictability and chaos for the rest of the century, because we're pretty much showing that there is no major singular dominant military and economic power that could crush any resistance around the world. So, yeah, hopefully that changes. but I'm not really sure if it will. Anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Zyper Sniper 1, longtime channel legend as well. He throws in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Zyper, for that support. He said the pizza fund for the enforcers, and we need to start showing strength before it's too late and show our enemies that we are a united force against all evil. And LSA, and question to the chat, please.
And LSA, and I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I'd have to agree with you, Zyper Sniper. I think it is about time that we start showing ourselves from a position of strength. You know, I actually remember a while ago, isn't it funny, folks? I just remembered something, and I remember all of the statements that were being made throughout the war, because, you know, we've been here the whole time, so I've seen all the statements. Matthew, don't you remember in, like, the first month of the war, when it broke out, and the then President of the United States came out and said, we're going to watch how the war goes, and in a month or two we might help out. And then everyone who was in the opposition to that party was saying, what the hell? America is so weak. We need to show the Russians what for. And then also when that Chinese balloon flew over the United States and, you know, there was nothing really done about it. It flew over the whole U.S. before we shot it down off the coast of South Carolina. And everyone went, what? The president is weak. We need stronger responses to our adversaries. We need to go to war with China. And you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so now in the present day, we sit there and say, okay, now it's time. We need to have a strong response to the Russians, and we also need to have a strong response to Chinese aggression in the Western Pacific, and we also need to have a strong response to Iran nuclearizing. Because don't you all remember when that one president sent over the pallet of cash to the Iranians and everything? And that was a big deal, and we should, you know, bomb the Iranians and make them submit to the United States because they're creating nuclear bombs, and we're now giving them money to create nukes. Don't you remember all those statements? I'm not getting political here. I'm just pointing out something a little interesting. So now that it's all come full circle, that something actually can be done about it, which I'd largely agree with all the sentiments that were being said in the past by one certain group. Yeah, I think the Russians should be dealt with. I think the Iranians and the Chinese should also be dealt with too. And now that it's actually come around to doing something, like I was saying, the tables have flipped. Now everyone's saying that we shouldn't do anything to these people, and we should just leave them alone. And it's like, out in the world, like, I just don't really know why in the world the U.S. is so scared of flexing our muscles. Because we used to, and the world was well under control. Like, it was very much well under control. There was stability, there were conflicts, but they were generally contained into small areas, and they didn't really overarch into any greater situation. Right now, with the kind of weakness that the U.S. has shown over the past 10 years, we see that in this current year right now, there are more wars now than there has ever been ongoing since the end of World War II. It's clearly showing that this kind of approach is not working. And eventually here, this is what's going to happen. This is going to reach America, and we're going to have to end up getting into a war, whether we like it or not. And everyone now who was silly enough to come up with these goofy notions that people keep on coming up and bringing up on this channel in small groups, the people who had those silly kind of notions are going to be going, oh my God, what could we have done to avoid this? Oh my God, this is terrible. Like, they're pretty much going to be saying the same things that people say these days about Hitler. Oh my God, why didn't anyone stop them? Why were they such cowards? Why didn't they just go and stop Hitler in 1936? Come on. They're all going to be saying that. And then tons of our folks are going to end up getting killed in a war instead of a few. It's just so bizarre to see it come around full circle again. What's crazy is that there is no such thing as teaching people about history in hopes that they'll never repeat it. People are pretty much doomed to repeat history. I'm pretty sure of that at this point, because it doesn't matter if you have foolproof examples of U.S. isolationism leading to terrible results twice in both major world wars. It does not matter if you have those great examples. People will just continue to do it again and again and again, and it's like nobody learns. Nobody, like it's just really a shame, because when you see it, you just sit there and know, yes, it would be a bad thing to get involved right now, and it will look bad, and it will look like we're pretty much shoving ourselves into it, but the reality is that if we don't do that, it's going to be a lot worse. It's kind of like It's kind of like having a cancerous growth on your leg, and if you sit there and you let it keep growing, the cancer will eventually spread to your brain and you'll get killed, or you can amputate the leg and try and survive. And instead of amputating the leg and taking an upfront action now that looks drastic but it will actually save your life, you sit there and go, no, I'm just going to let the cancerous growth grow, and eventually the cells will break loose into my bloodstream, reach my brain, and then it'll kill me, because I really don't want to cut off my leg. That seems kind of extreme. That's what we're looking at right now. Like that's what we're looking at. Then that's what we've been looking at for 10 years. And then we sit there and we just keep watching it, and then we just keep on going, well, you know what, we'll just avoid it, and I'm sure it'll turn into nothing. And then we let this monster grow literally in front of our very eyes until we can't avoid it, and we can't not work against it. We have to actually fight the thing, and now it's a lot worse than it ever was before. But you know, it doesn't matter how much I say that, folks. It doesn't matter how much I speak that, because the powers that be, no matter who they are, whether they're from one political party or the other, they just don't have the kind of balls or the gumption that anyone else would have had for literally the entirety of the 20th century, no matter what political affiliation they were from, to actually go out there and make those tough calls that were proactive but saved us from a lot of hurt and a lot of harm if they hadn't acted. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, at least in my opinion. I do thank you for the support and help this channel keep it running. And Matthew, did they want a live chat?
Yes, they did.
Oh, well, let's go ahead and get it.
So that live chat question goes to Hachi Oda, who said, how bad do things have to get at home before it's covered as much in detail as our foreign interests?
Pretty much it's almost impossible. We are not going to be covering any domestic American political news, because we just don't do that. That's just not really our kind of news topics that we cover. Now, I will say that if you want to hear about that, I would highly recommend Agenda Free TV with Steve Lookner. That's a great show. He covers that kind of stuff in great detail, but we don't really do that here. That's just not really our kind of news that we cover. Also, another thing is that people in general, and this isn't really a channel thing, to be quite honest, Agenda Free TV is doing wildly well covering that news. He's getting like 80,000 live viewers and stuff. It's insane. But the thing is that me personally, I get fatigued really quickly from people who are really politicized. It really wears me down. And I can't really go into something and run a show where I would get mentally exhausted in 10 minutes watching the spew that would be coming out of people's mouths about the stuff, because like nobody really knows what they're talking about with this kind of stuff. Literally nobody. I mean, you know, like, for one, like I'll speak about it really quickly from what I'm seeing, and no one's going to agree with me by the end of this. This is why I don't want to cover it. So for one, they are riots. They're not peaceful protests. Like, let's just get that out of the way. They are riots. They're burning cars. It's not a peaceful protest. It is quite truly violent by every measure. However, sending in federal forces without the request of the state governor is absolutely an overstep of federal authority. So I really don't agree with either side on this, because one, a lot of people want to say it's a peaceful protest. They're quite clearly riots. But at the same time, the federal government is trying to act like they have authority to just pretty much federalize everything in a state and then just go in and run it like it's a federal district, which isn't the case either. If anything, it should be dealt with by the state of California. And if people don't like how the state of California is dealing with it, well, that's not your problem if you're not from the state of California. If you're from the state of California and you don't like it, maybe you need to elect a new governor and a state legislator. That's kind of the reality of the situation that we're looking at right now. I mean, that's the realistic way of looking at it, but trying to cover that as an actual main news source, there's going to be no one who sees that. We're going to have to deal with people who are, you know, saying silly stuff like, oh, the National Guard knows who's an illegal and who isn't, or they're peaceful protests, or the president has every right to go arrest a governor or something. You know, it's going to be stuff like that in realistic sense, none of those things make a lot of great sense, to be entirely honest from my end. You know, at least how I'm looking at it. So I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. But that's how I'm looking at it right now. And that's just generally why I don't want to cover it, because there's not really a lot of sense to be had covering anything domestic or political anymore in America, and that takes a toll on me, having to like see like a sea of that at any given point. I literally avoid any kind of political news anywhere where there's like an active running live chat, because the kind of stuff people say, it just makes so little sense from every end, whether they're from like the left or the right. I just can't really get on board with any of it, or even see any sense in it all. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Measure Man, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Measure Man, as well, for that $20 support. And we do appreciate it very much. And he said, incredible reporting, guys, and top tier through and through with integrity. Rarely found these days. And thank you for the kind words, good sir. He said, thank you sincerely. And question, with the air so saturated, are you seeing developments in terms of digging, tunneling, and sensor camo? And thank you.
Hey, and a great question, actually. That's a pretty deep one, Measure Man. I got to thank you for support all the way from Sweden. And thank you so much for enjoying the incredible reporting and the top tier, thorough integrity that we have. Rarely found these days. I got to thank you for that. And also, with drone warfare becoming incredibly prevalent in the modern day, we have not really seen a great deal of tunneling. There's been limited tunneling in more fixed positions, but we're actually starting to see that the main thing that's being done is an evolution of electronic warfare and also any kind of anti-drone equipment that can be mounted onto vehicles or infantry themselves. Tunneling is a very expensive and laborious thing, and with the rapidity of modern warfare, a tunnel boring machine or a trench digging machine is a very specialized piece of equipment that would have to stay in place for a very long amount of time without really any defenses and would most likely be subject to destruction, meaning that tunneling on any significant scale or any industrial sizes that would be able to handle a lot of military equipment, you wouldn't really see a lot of development in that. It would be really hard to actually tunnel in modern warfare properly. The Ukrainians have dug trenches, the Russians have dug trenches, but that's because their front lines have solidified. If this was an actual fluid war like we would see in any other kind of a major conventional war, that would be pretty much impractical for the greater deal. So what we're seeing right now is that pretty much every country is going in heavily into trying to develop anti-drone weaponry or more advanced electronic warfare. The electronic warfare side of things is really to deal with any kind of a drone that isn't fiber optically operated, and then the anti-drone warfare weaponry is largely going against anything that's fiber optic operated or largely operating as a redundancy if the electronic warfare system doesn't succeed. So we've seen that a lot of laser-based weapon systems are starting to come out of the woodworks, and a lot of those are actually incredibly efficient. They're very cheap to operate, and not only that, they also are able to shoot down drones in large amounts rapidly. So with that in mind, it seems as though that's really the main category that we're starting to see in development to dealing with the drones and the crowded airspaces that we're seeing in drone warfare is those kinds of air defense systems. I have a feeling that warfare is not really going to change a lot on the surface of what it looks like. We're pretty, warfare is not ever going to physically change too much. It's just really the technology and the weaponry that's surrounding the current fighting. There will still be main battle tanks. I'm entirely certain on that. Main battle tanks still have a place on the battlefield as an assault gun, an armored assault gun for the large part. The infantry still have a place on the battlefield. Pretty much every single system we still see today still has a place on the battlefield, but it's going to be heavily augmented in the way it works in the future, and there's going to be a lot more electronic warfare units and a lot more anti-drone protections and weapon systems that you'll be seeing put out there onto the battlefield to try and protect the infantry and their armor as they continue to try and push forward their offensives or even conduct offensives. But I just don't really think we'll be seeing a great deal. Tunneling will exist on solidified fronts like we're seeing right now, but in any kind of an actual fluid war, which would be more so a major conventional war, I think we're going to be seeing that tunneling is going to be a fairly niche kind of a thing, only done in select areas and highly specialized like it still is right now. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And everyone always has to remember this too. This is a really big thing with warfare, is that warfare is an endless arms race to try and outdo someone's weapon system, and then you create a defense that completely moots that weapon system, and then you create a weapon system in response that not only moots what they're doing, but actually counteracts it and damages them farther. So as far as that goes, modern warfare, by its historical design, like it has been for really the past several hundred years, it will change a little bit in how it will look, but there will still be infantry on the field, actually on the ground itself, and there won't really be a lot of tunneling underground to try and avoid the drones. And also on top of that, if you were to tunnel underground, then the next technological development would be a system that would be able to pretty much create a seismograph of the ground below, find out where those tunnel systems are, and then specialized artillery shells or drones would be made to be able to puncture the ground, explode deep enough within it to actually collapse those tunnels and pretty much trap the troops inside. So even still, it's most likely not going to be a likely sort of thing. And then if that was the case, then you would just see that technological and weapons evolution would start to once again move towards anti-drone systems and then electronic warfare systems to still try and stop those drones from attacking the tunnels. And considering the tunnels take a lot of time and they're expensive to make, you would still see that they revert back to surface warfare because it would just be prohibitively expensive to conduct tunneling as your main form of warfare. But still, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel keep it running. I hope that does address that the best I can. And that's not to say that tunneling is completely out of the picture. It's just that it's still going to be relatively niche, kind of like it is now. And we'll probably see that it's either trenches or nothing. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. Hope that does address that incredibly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Rye Guy SR yet again, who puts in a 10 this time. And thank you very much, good sir, once again for that support. He said, hit the like button for the greatest news show in the solar system. And thank you, Rye Guy. He said, good evening, Enforcers.
Hey, and a big hello to Rye Guy, and a good evening to you. And please, folks, do hit the like button. We would love to see it. We actually hit 3,015 likes tonight. And as far as the like ratio goes, which I'm actually interested in, I haven't seen it so far tonight. Oh, actually, we're not doing that bad. We're actually at a 96% like rate, which is fairly average for our streams. I thought that the rage that we saw in the live chat about an hour ago was going to bleed over into the dislikes. It actually really didn't. So that shows that was a very small group of people that were displeased with that analysis. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much for the support, Rye Guy. And if y'all do want to hit the like button, please do. We've actually had about 70,000 people watch this stream in just the first 2.5 hours alone. And I got to say that it's once again a massive honor, and we're greatly appreciative to have each and every single one of y'all here with us tonight and enjoying this channel and supporting it so that we can keep it on running and keep on covering the news. Hopefully, we'll be able to get out some short war videos. Matthew's day is tomorrow to make the short war video. So if there is news, he will be making it. We have had almost no news in the middle of the day for about the entirety of the month, and it's concerning to us because we were like, we want to make videos and we are not able to make videos. So hopefully we'll be able to get to that starting tomorrow. Hopefully there will be enough news to make one tomorrow. We might still push one forward anyways because we kind of have to make them. But a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that it's addressed that incredibly well. And please, once again, folks, feel perfectly fine to hit that like button. And a good evening to you once again, Rye Guy. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Max Knightman, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Max, as well, for that support. He said the best intro ever and blasting with the windows open.
Hey, and thank you so much for enjoying. I love to hear it, actually. I put loads of effort into that thing, Max Diamond. That is my baby right there, my project. I still have to give a huge shout out to the composer, Marcos Barilari, and also Budapest Scoring. I always have to give them a huge shout out because they were actually the ones that made this entire thing possible. Like they were the ones who actually turned my lyrics, an AI composed version of the anthem, into an actual orchestrated score and then an actual orchestrated track. So I had to give them a huge credit for that. But I absolutely love the intro. A lot of people loved it when it originally came out. But as things changed in America, a lot of people always want to complain that the stream intro is long and it's getting longer. The reality is that it stayed the same length. It actually got shorter a little bit with the introduction of the new music, and some people are just anti-American and trying to disguise it as not liking the intro. I can tell. Like that's not something I'm trying to say like to the people who are dissing on it and then try and like pretty much downplay what they're saying. A lot of people used to love the intro and it was 14 minutes long. Now the intro, I believe, is 12 minutes and 30 seconds long, so it's a minute and 30 seconds less in length, but it's got a lot of American patriotic songs in it. And then those very same people who like the old intro now want to say that the intro sucks, it's too long, this channel sucks, it's going downhill. So, you know, like, some people really hate it, and they make it incredibly clear. But I love to know that people like you really enjoy it, because that's what I made it for. I made it for people to really enjoy it and appreciate it, and I wanted the channel to really portray the pro-American kind of a mindset that both Matthew and me have during the intro. Like, we want people to click on this channel and know, okay, this channel is as pro-American as it could get. Like, there's really no question about that, because their whole intro is patriotic music, and that also did not cost cheap. Like, if I was not a pro-American, I wouldn't have gone and shelled out a whole load of cash that I could have saved in the bank and made sure that I was more financially secure. I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't a big American patriot. So with that, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and I love to hear that you played at full blast, because I also played at full blast in my car when I go driving around. But a big thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a $10 donation as well, and thank you very much, Jenna, for that support. They said, I got nothing, take my money.
Hey, and I gotta thank you for support, and I gotta thank you for allowing us to take your money. Of course, no one has to support the channel. It's an entirely voluntary thing, but folks like you have helped this channel to keep on running day in and day out, and I gotta thank you incredibly for that, because if it wasn't for folks like you, it wouldn't make this thing possible. It wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality. We wouldn't be able to keep it rolling, and so a huge thanks to you, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. We wouldn't be able to be here, and so a big thanks to you so much once again. And also, Crispy said, before we move on to the next one, let's see, you can put multiple intros in if people are complaining. Honestly, no, because like not to like quickly cut that off like I'm being rude or anything, but here's the reason why I'm saying no, like just vehemently. That intro that we're running right now, just to put this out there, because we put it out there before, and just to put it out there again, that thing cost me about 10 grand to make. Like, it was a very expensive kind of an undertaking, and it was very incredibly expensive because we wanted music that we had the copyrights to, for one, and two, we wanted it to be as patriotic as possible, so that way the bulk of our audience, which is about 60% American, came in every night and they're like, wow, this is really a patriotic channel. And we want even our allies around the world, you know, throughout the rest of the LSA and the Western world, to get on and go, dang, this is one hell of an intro. I really feel proud for what we're standing for here. So, you know, it wasn't an incredibly cheap undertaking. We did that to make that pretty much permanent. So, you know, my stance on that, because it took such a massive amount of time and a massive amount of expense, is that if people don't like it, they just don't like it. They're going to have to live with it, because I didn't put all of that time and effort and literal hard cash into that thing to, you know, have people come in and go, ugh, this sucked. You know, it's like, if you don't like it at that point, you know, it's like you can just leave. Because like, no joke, like I went and tried to make sure that this was the best intro that we could have ever gotten, like something that would be a magnum opus, which is great work in Latin, for our show. Like, it was going to be wildly good. And I went over the top to make sure that it was wildly good. We have the same orchestra doing the score that has done the Squid Game soundtrack, the Die Hard soundtrack, Home Alone's soundtrack. They did all of those, like every single one of them. And then I had a composer from Disney Pixar actually compose the thing. Like, you know, it's like I went and found the best people I could to do that, because I wanted to make sure that we were going to do something for everyone on the channel, that it was going to be the highest quality, because that's what we always try and do. We always try and make sure that everything that we do is the highest quality, because we really appreciate y'all, and we want to show that in the work we do, either in our news or our coverage, and how well polished it can be, or even in stuff like that with the intro. Like, if we were going to make our own custom intro, it wasn't going to be a MIDI map, it was going to be a full orchestra made by a Disney Pixar composer. And so, you know, like with that whole thing, like, if people are unhappy with it, you know, it's like, well, you know, it's like, what gives? It's like, I can't really do much more for them, because if that doesn't make them happy, with that much effort and time and money put into it, nothing will make them happy. Like, I'll go and find a nursery rhyme, and they'll be complaining that that's like childish or something. You know, go get an orchestra. The truth is that you can't make people on the internet happy, no matter what. A lot of people on the internet complain endlessly. Like, it's not really everyone on the internet. It's actually a small group of people on the internet who complain, but they complain so much it seems like the whole internet. But they're a bunch of sad, angry people, and they just want to complain about everything. Like, a new model train can come out. There are people in the comment section below it just shitting on it. Yeah, a new plane could come out. They're shitting on it. A new public service could be brought out. They're shitting on it. Someone could be doing something good. They're shitting on it. Someone could be doing something bad. They're shitting on it. You can't even tell what's good and bad anymore through what the most vocal minority on the internet's saying, because they just say everything's terrible. Like, any new movie that comes out, terrible, sucks. There's no good movies. And I know they're lying, because I went and watched a couple of good movies that were made in the modern day, and I was like, hey, these are actually pretty decent. Like, they're not bad at all. And these people are just, you know, like they hate their lives or something, so they want everyone else to feel like it. You know, people say stuff like, "Oh, LA is terrible. LA sucks," and Seattle's a hellhole. And then you go there and it's actually pretty decent. It's pretty nice. It's like people just like, or people say stuff like, Alabama's a shithole, which is one of the few things that I actually think is actually true. Like that one actually might be true. But that's that's just kind of how it is on the internet. So people who complain about it, it's like, well, their time is nigh. Like it's like their time is nigh here, because if they don't like that, they're not going to like anything. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But still, a huge thanks to you once again for enjoying the intro. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Adam McLean, who puts in a $20 donation. Man, thank you very much, Adam, for that $20 support, and we do appreciate that very much. And I do not see, actually, any message attached to it, so there's nothing to address. But, Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you for the support, helping this channel to keep on running, because while you didn't throw in a comment, the support is incredible and helps us to keep this channel running, Adam McLean. And I got to thank you incredibly for helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we just wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, I just saw someone say they're addicted to being outraged as far as some people on the internet. I would agree. Rage baiting is a big thing now on the internet. It always was a big thing, because, psychological tests have actually proven that anger or anything along those lines are pretty much your strongest emotions. And so a lot of people figured that out way back in the day on the internet, and a lot of people would get into rage baiting because that is a big way to succeed on the internet. And that's really a big way to succeed in anything. Even mainstream news does rage baiting, like Fox and CNN. Like, go look at those networks. Like, CNN is telling you that the one political party is attempting to kill you, and then you go to the Fox News, and then they tell you that the other political party is trying to kill you. They keep you on because that outrages you. These crazy stories that they come up with, they're outraging. They make people angry, and then people want to come back because they can't believe how angry that made them, and they want to hear it again, or a different story like it, to get angry again. And that's the way a lot of the internet works too. I mean, like, people on the internet just feed off of rage bait. And so there's an entire culture of people out there now who make their entire real lives, and also their lives on the internet, entirely about just trying to create their own rage. Like, if they can't find rage that was made for them by a YouTuber like us, they just try and go around and create it. Kind of like Hot Dog Man and his people. His entire existence, it still is still on rage baiting. He failed at that, though. I don't, honestly, man, like, honestly, man, he's just a story of how to do everything wrong, because he rage baited, which should have been a thing that would have made him succeed, but he's been the biggest failure in the category that anyone's ever seen. Like, he literally is stagnated at this point. He's actually regressing. It's like, you just can't make that kind of stuff up. But yeah, that's generally how it works. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to none other than Duncan VR, who puts in a $13 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, as well, for that support. And I'll be honest with you, Duncan, I have had a very long day today, and sadly, I'm going to skip on the animal noises because I think my patience has gone to the wind today. But thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR. And I thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it rolling. So a big thanks to you once again. And I think Matthew's had a long day because of the whole thing of us nearly getting shot earlier, which is kind of a whole thing unto itself. But still, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jeffrey Walker, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Jeffrey, as well, for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And he said, great evening, Enforcers, and just listened to the English transcription of my Proctor, and I was put in tears, and not all soldiers wear uniforms, and y'all put up a good fight. And LLT, LSA, and TACP plus A10 forever.
Hey, thank you so much for the support. And the Bayraktar song actually has some really interesting lyrics. It's a pretty fun song, though. And I got to say that folks like you helping this channel to keep on running, it's an incredible thing. It helps this channel to be possible and be a reality every single day. And I also got to say thank you so much for the kind words. That's really high praise right there. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So big thanks to you once again, Jeffrey Walker, for the support, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one. A huge thanks to you so much once again. Also, let's see. Also, someone said here, Dasman123, I'll address this real quick. Your no politics stance, they can't spell actually. Your no politics stance is burning, just like Russian bombers. Sarcasm and whataboutisms cannot be sevenced. I don't even know what that is. To defend your hyperbole that would banhammer users over in the past. Hypocrisy. You know, we analyze things in this channel. Like, I'm sorry that you, like, worship just some guy. Like, I'm sorry about that. But the truth is here is that we analyze things. I'm not someone who sits there and goes, why, yes, this person is God alive. Because you know something that's crazy? All of y'all appreciate this channel, especially, well, you don't, but a lot of people appreciate this channel, but I hope that people understand that Matthew and me are not perfect people. We do goofy things. We mess up. We do things that are not right sometimes, but that's a part of being a person. And I don't expect people to hold us up on a pedestal and treat us like God Almighty, because that's when you start getting into insanity, cult worship, things like that. It's something very common in the modern political scene. When we criticize the last guy, people want to say that. When we criticize this guy, people want to say that. The reality is that y'all don't like to hear things that don't sound great for your guy, even if it's true. And the reality is that what's going on in the Middle East right now is not good. I hate to tell you that. It's not good. It wasn't good under the last guy. I didn't have really great things to say about what he was doing in the Middle East. It wasn't great under the guy before him, which is the same guy as we have right now, and it wasn't great under the guy before even him, from 2008 to 2016. Wasn't great under any of them. And to say that, for people like you, all you hear is, he criticized my guy. It doesn't matter if he criticized everyone over the past 15 years. He criticized my guy, so clearly he's against me. And that takes such a low level of intelligence that you'd have to be the equivalent of living human cattle to come up with something like that. Because I've gone through just the thickets tonight trying to explain that these kinds of things that have been going on today in Russia and Iran and in the Western Pacific, they're things that have been going on for decades and have been mismanaged for decades, and no specific person or political party is really responsible, but the current person has a say in changing that, and then they're not, and they're continuing it on. That's what we say on this channel. If you want to take that as political, you're probably too ignorant to really be on the channel. Like you probably really belong somewhere where they simplify things, where you know, the senile old man, which really could be either political party at this point, is perfect, and the other senile old man is wrong on everything. That's probably more so a channel that you would like. Maybe you would like to go to kindergarten and watch a puppet show, like where they hold up the little sock puppets on their hands, and they talk like that, and they really simplify things, where this political party is good, and this political party is bad. Maybe you would like that more, because I don't really work on that kind of a thing. I actually have a brain, funnily enough. I like to use it. So if that's something that you don't like, probably not really the show for you. If you like that kind of stuff, you're welcome here. But that's how it kind of goes. So, you know, if you don't like it, no, there's a door for you to leave out of. So with that, hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Tom Exman, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Tom, as well, for that $10 support and also helping to keep us running. And we do appreciate that very much. And he said, I give 10 and you can give 10.
And I got to thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And nobody has to give any support if they don't want to. Nobody has to. It's always a voluntary thing. We always want people to feel like they're not being forced to or compelled to do it at all. We don't want to be like, you know, Joel Osteen or anything. like, you know, to the shirt. Like, no. You can support if you want to. You don't have to. You can watch literally the entire time we're on air until we eventually go off air. I don't even know when that'll be, like a decade from now, maybe. And you can never support a dime, and that's perfectly fine. We're more than happy to just have you all here. But I do thank you once again for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we shouldn't keep it running. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again, all jokes aside. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Uncle David, other nephew, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. They said, thanks for all the hard work, guys.
And I gotta say, Thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and thank you for enjoying our hard work. We try and put in the most hard work we can every day, and today was one hell of a day. It was an exhausting one, I'll admit, to be entirely honest. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you once again, Jenna, for that support. They said a superpower would have air superiority wherever it wants, and Russia is not a superpower. In fact, Russia is shit.
I would agree. Like, they don't have air superiority anywhere, not even really in their country at this point. So I would agree with that for sure. And I got to thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and making it possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Michael Tripto, who puts in a 10. And Michael said, God bless Ukraine. And imagine if this were your own country.
And I gotta say, that it would be a little bit concerning if this was our country. That's something that a lot of people try and put into perspective for some folks, and they just don't get it. It's the kind of folks that can watch something wrong happen, and it's fine until the same thing happens to them, and then it's crossing the line. It's kind of that thing. But I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got a $10 super chat from Con LOC, who said taco.
Oh, well, I personally like burritos better, but I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Con, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to have a taco fun. We wouldn't be able to have some delicious tacos. And I will say that generally when I'm speaking of tacos, I'm speaking of Taco Bell tacos. I know that's more so Tex-Mex than anything, but I generally like the burritos more than the tacos from Taco Bell, although their name is Taco Bell. So a big thanks to you once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next two also go to Jenna, last name Tolls, who put in a 10 two more times. And thank you very much, Jenna, as well, for that support. They said they timed me out for talking about taco. They're fair. And if you're a fan of a politician, you're definitely going to come out of it let down. Let's see. They said America.
And I thank you for the support, Jenna, last name Tolls. And I'd agree. I'd completely agree. As far as I view it, I vote for people based on business. I'm not trying to make them my friend, and I'm not trying to like them. I'm just trying to get things done. And so many people don't get that in this country. So many people don't get it. You know, they fell for the whole political scam that these people are your friends when they're not. They don't even know who the hell all y'all are. Like, none of them do. Not even the people who are your actual representatives. Do you think your representative knows you or cares about you? No. So why in the world do people get so invested in caring about them? I just care about if they're doing what I think is right or not. And if they're not, I get them out. Like, I'm not here for them to tell me what I need. I'm here to tell them what I want. And if they're not getting that, I'm voting them out. So if it looks like the state of Alabama is getting poorer, I'm going to vote for someone who isn't making the state of Alabama poorer. Like, if it's becoming poorer under the current representatives, I'd assume it's going to get poorer again in the next 2 years or the next 6 years that they'll be in. So I'd vote for the other guy. Or something along those lines. You know, that's just really how it kind of works. And a lot of people don't get that. A lot of people vote for these people and act like they're friends with them. And I just don't really get that whole mindset, because to be friends with them, you got to know them. And nobody who's voting for these people personally knows them. Like, I can tell you this. Like, I can tell you, I promise you, with with everything I got, that you actually met these people, most of them, and you actually sat around and knew them for a couple of weeks, you'd probably not like them. Even if you voted for them, you'd probably be like, these people are terrible people. You probably would, because they're fake. Their whole thing is fake. Like, have y'all ever seen anyone walk up to one of these people, these senators or representatives, and ask them a question? Have y'all ever seen how fake all of them act? Like, everything they do in front of anyone, it's all an act. It's a mask. They're not real people. They're not who they're acting to be. They're these amalgamations of what they think the public wants them to be. So why the hell even getting personally invested in someone like that? I mean, haven't y'all heard of all this of the scandals and things that these people get involved in? You know, like one of them gets paid for by the Turks, you know, in New York. Another one, you know, they're getting a little handsy in a theater and they're caught on camera. You know, another guy doesn't want to put a seatbelt on a plane. I mean, like think about these people. Like, that's them with the mask off. Like, that's who they are. And then they put on a mask for everyone in public, on all ends, and then they act like they're nice people, and people fall for it every single time. And it's like, that's why if you ever wonder why in the world the politicians so bad, it's because they're preying on suckers, and you really got to sit there and think about it for a minute. Are you one of those suckers? And if your answer is immediately, I'm not a sucker, you might be a sucker. You really got to think about that and go, am I really getting had by these people for an ass? Because a lot of people, believe it or not, end up being that kind of person. Especially if you are personally invested in these people and you act like for some reason you have some sort of love for them, you're being had, like 100%. Even if you like a political party, you're not supposed to love the people in it. This is strictly business. You don't mix feelings with business. That's just something you don't do. But with that, hope that does address it the best I can. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $10 super chat from Alaska. And thank you very much, Alaska, as well. They said, if Iran nuke site is bombed by Israel, will Iran respond with nuke in response, considering that at the point they either put up or shut up, potentially unifying the opposition?
If they get nuked first and Iran doesn't have a nuke, they're probably going to be nuked thoroughly enough that they won't get a nuke. So I would assume that they probably would not fire back because they might not have an operational nuclear weapon at that point. That would be my assumption, at least. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Ryan Smith, who put in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Ryan, as well, for that generous support and just throwing that in right now. And he said, you guys rule. And thank you for that. They said, super entertained every show. And the 24-hour news cycle has created the fanatics on both sides for sure. And like how you guys call it the way it is. And records speak for themselves. Honestly, they have created fanatics. The 24-hour news cycle might be one of the largest causes for destruction in America at this point, along with social media. Between those two platforms, they have ripped the society in America to shreds, honestly, and they're still doing it. So until people get unbrainwashed from all that crap, then it's going to be a tough road to hoe, I think. But when it eventually does get fixed, I think it will return back to normal. But I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know how long that's going to take. That's my big question. But thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I thank you so much for the kind words and the support, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. I also got to say, thank you so much for being super entertained and enjoying us calling it for what it is. We try and make sure on the channel we call things for what they are, and I hope that we did that fairly well tonight. It's very tiresome. It's very, very tiresome in the modern world to call things for what they are, Ryan Smith, because there are a lot of people out there, and I really don't know what to call them by name, because Snowflake doesn't do it. Like, you know, like Snowflake has almost become a generic term for everyone now. And I just don't really know if that fits. I would actually say that man-child really fits everyone. I mean, like, across the board. It's not just men. It's men and women who are really heavily involved in politics. They don't think like adults, like rational, reasoning people. A lot of them think like man-children. Like, they're pretty much children, but in like a grown person's body. And they don't think logically. They don't think straight. It's just something insane to me how it works. Like, we can say something on this channel that is by the letter of the law, and people will be so stupid that they'll say in one hand they support the Constitution, and then when we say that the Constitution says something is unlawful or something is wrong, then they want to say that we're traitors or something. I don't even get it. A lot of these people are just ridiculous. But still, I thank you for appreciating us calling it for what it is, because it's a wild thing these days. Just a crazy thing. I don't really know how to make sense of it anymore. And I'll be honest with y'all, the more and more I've been exposed to it on the internet, I originally came onto the internet with a very bright disposition about people, and I was always like, there's going to be a silver lining out there. There people can be reasoned with. Over the years, my mindset's changed on that. I actually see that really it's not one political party or the other that can be reasoned with. It's actually both of them. And that kind of a atmosphere in this country these days might actually not really pose the nation well for longevity's sake. So, a little bit concerning to me on that, because it doesn't matter how much you try and speak logically to people or how well you actually have your facts put out. These people don't want to hear that. They just want to pretty much further stupidity, and some of them actually revel in the chaos of it all. It's just a really kind of bizarre thing. I just don't really understand it much. Like, I don't really even know how to put it into words anymore, because there's been so many people who come on this channel, and y'all have seen this before. I'm sure you've seen this before as well, Ryan Smith. The political channels, like let's say like Ben Shapiro or some sort of channel like him, like the Young Turks on the other side, to make sure that we have both examples on both political ends, and they'll go out to like a protest or something, and they'll start asking people, what do you think? And they don't think anything. A lot of these people are so stupid they don't even know why they're out there. Like on both ends. Like I remember, folks. There was one. I've actually watched videos on both ends of that. There was one time that one guy. I'm sure you remember this one, Matthew. He went up to Seattle to that thing that existed in Seattle for a bit and asked him, why are you here? And none of them really had a good answer. And then there was that other guy who went down there to that one convention where the My Pillow guy was at, and then no one down there knew what they were there for. And on both ends, nobody knew what they were actually supporting. They were just there to support it because they were there. And nobody actually knew. And that's like the large majority of the United States. Nobody actually knows what they're really doing or supporting or anything. They just kind of like blindly do things. And then if you're someone like me who has like a set belief in something, like we've been unchanged. I've been unchanged personally, just speaking for myself, on my stances and beliefs on what is important for American affairs abroad in foreign policy. And I have judged every single president on this channel, and there's only been 2, very fairly by that metric. Every single time. And if they don't fall within the specific metric that I said is largely pertinent to American interest for overseas, I say that they're not doing something great. And it's wildly fair that way. And then people will come in here and they'll say, you're being very political and there's nothing wrong with what that guy's doing. And then when I asked them, they have no reason why they believe that. And I can lay out a slew of reasons why I would just believe across the board something is a bad idea no matter who's doing it. And then they don't care. Like they don't care. They'd rather go up against another stupid person who doesn't know what they're talking about, rather than go up with someone who has a set idea on what should be done and then saying whether something's good or not. So that's just kind of the lay of the land. But I thank you for enjoying the channel and supporting it and appreciating how we put it out for what it is. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Zyper Sniper 1, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Zyper, as well, for that $10 support, and we do appreciate it. And he said, didn't North Korea join the war on Russia's side? And if Ukraine had the range, then they could legally attack North Korean land, or what happened in that situation?
And I thank you for the support. Yes, North Korea is officially a member of the war on Russia's side, but I don't think Ukraine will ever have the range to be able to strike North Korea because it is ICBM distance away. It is about 4,300 miles away, so it'd be next to impossible for them to actually have the range. But if they were able to create a weapon system that did have a long enough range, they actually would be able to hit it, and quite easily. So with that, I thank you to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ronald, who puts in a 10. He said the U.S. has diverted 20,000 air defense caps meant for Ukraine to the Middle East. And any word on who actually needs them more than Ukraine?
Just generally U.S. forces in the Middle East, from what we understand. But I don't really get it because those weapon systems that were diverted are wildly old. I mean, it's Hawk missiles and stuff like that. It's honestly just obsolete for our purposes, so I don't really know why we sent those, but that's all the information I have at the moment. But I still thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it rolling. So a big thanks to you once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Butchie777, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Butchie, as well, for that 10-pound donation, and also very heavy donation and helping to keep the channel running as well. And we do appreciate that, Butchie. And thank you very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a big thanks to Butchie777 for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Dunkle X, who says, who puts in a 10 and says, to Matt and Andrew, how do you think drone production, third world countries making effective drones cheap, will affect regional politics? And it could be a fun thought experiment. And honestly, making cheap drones, basically, that's going to become an easy way to start launching wars on each other. And also for bad things like terrorism to take hold as well, because people will use those as weapons. So I think it will actually cause an increase in wars because it makes it more accessible. It also puts distance between combatants, and that lowers the barrier to entry for a war. So generally, not good, honestly. Overall, I would say not good. It makes it easier to fight a war for Ukraine, but it also is not good for regional and global politics either. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to agree. Generally, it's just going to give any country on the planet the ability to mass produce weapons, at least at this point, that are pretty much completely non-interceptable. So it's going to be a really interesting thing with that. And honestly, I don't even know how that's going to impact places like Africa or South America. South America is a lot more stable than Africa is at the moment. But considering that there are a lot of countries in these regions that could get these drones and put them to hard use for the large part, it's going to be a pretty wild thing to watch. It's probably going to destabilize these regions significantly because any warlord anywhere at this point in Central Africa could wield the firepower that others could only dream of up until this point for pennies on the dollar. So with that, I hope that I've addressed it the best I can. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Adam McLean, who puts in a $10 donation. And Adam says, amazing times we live in right now, and I'm not impressed by any means.
And I got to thank you for the support, Adam McLean, and I'm not wildly impressed by many means either. But I do thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I thank you so much for trying to keep it non-political. I hope that you do. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Measure Man, who puts in a 10. And Measure Man said, if you guys ever need anything eyeballed, call me, because I have the best eyeballing eyesight in the entire universe, and you can tell by the name, obviously. And I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Take my money, LOL.
Well, I thank you for the support, and I thank you for helping this channel to keep on running, Measure Man, all the way from Sweden again. And I got to say, eyeballing is a great thing. I don't even know where that phrase comes from, honestly. I don't know if I came up with it or if it's something I heard before and I'm running with. But I will make sure to call you up if we need someone to eyeball something. So a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to FC Nape. Goodness, excuse me. FC Nape's put in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He said, thank you for all you do. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be informed about the day's current events. And the Leaf Spring Army will never die. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Hey, he did the thing. He did the whole thing. You know what? We're on to the next one. I'm just kidding with the FC Napes, but I do thank you for the support. And yeah, I sound like a broken record sometimes. But in my defense, folks, we have at least 30 to 40 super chats every single night. And we run this show every single day. We've run this for about, collectively, excluding Mondays, about 1,100 days at this point, or a little bit shorter than that. It's maybe like 1,050 straight days. And there's only so many things that I can say. Like, there's only so many creative variations of that I can do until it pretty much becomes something that I just have to revert to as like a base template. Because thinking up a new way to think, folks, takes a lot of mental effort. And so once I come up with something that sounds really good, I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds really appreciative. We'll go with that. And then I just started doing that over and over. I know it gets repetitive, folks, but you got to understand from my end, there are dozens of super chats that come in every night. We're greatly appreciative for all of them, but there's only a handful of ways that you can say thanks for some support before you run out of ways. And considering that we've probably gotten tens of thousands of super chats over 3.5 years, I can only say it so many ways. But I had to explain myself. I had to defend myself right there, FC Napes. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. The support is greatly appreciated and helps us to be here covering the news for all of y'all. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to WF2U, who puts in a $5 donation, and thank you very much, good sir, as well. They said the attack on the Houthis' Hodeidah seaport today was done with missiles launched from 2 Israeli Navy missile frigates, and not by the IAF.
Oh, thank you for the support, and you are correct. Actually, I forgot to mention that it was the Israeli Navy that fired at the port, not the Air Force. I said the Air Force during the stream. That was completely mistaken. It was actually the Navy. So thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, I wouldn't be able to correct the blunder I just did on air right there, saying it was the Israeli Air Force and not the Navy, which it was. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jack Ray, who puts in a 5. And Jack said, a paint and varnish factory could be used for electronic circuit protection coatings, anti-radar coatings, etc.
Oh, it could be. It could be. That's actually an interesting idea right there. It could be. And I gotta thank you for sharing that. That's actually a reason why it could have been hit as a military target. And I gotta thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running and make it possible. And Matthew, I've never seen someone come in and do that jab at us before. I don't know if you see that one in the chat. That one's new.
No, that's actually a common one right there. That's very common.
Man, that's the first time I've ever seen that one right there. That guy is finna take Shota to the swamp. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Joey Hadsell, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Joey, as well. He said, if the U.S. were to take out Iran's nuclear facilities, would we have to bring back the GBU-28 or use something like a nuke to damage them? And long live the LSA.
We probably would bring back some sort of conventional bunker-busting munition, like the GBU-28, most likely. I would doubt that we would go immediately to offensive first-strike nuclear action. That's something that we don't account for in our nuclear doctrine currently. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I think it wants to give us support and help this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Still Thankin', who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Still Thankin', for Still Thankin', and also throwing in nice support to the channel as well. And we do appreciate it very much. And we also have a $5 super chat from Rally, who said, how Russian nukes work if we pay $80 billion a year just to maintain them, and the entire Russian whole military budget is $90 billion.
Actually, before the war, interesting enough, it was only $55 billion. Nowadays, we think it's like up around $200 billion, $220 billion a year, over the past 2 years. But the interesting thing about that is that they don't. The reality is that a lot of those nuclear weapons are completely unusable. It's just that we don't know how many of them are completely unusable. And there's also a lot of scamming and conning and things that go on with Russian procurements, maintenance, and military operations as a whole. So that even cuts down on the technical minimum operational nuke number even further. So we actually do not know right now how many of them are operational, but it's not a large number of them. They claim that they have thousands, but much like their tanks and everything else, on paper they have a lot of them, but that's only on paper. In reality, they probably only have a handful or maybe a couple of dozen or 100 or so that actually are operational from what we assume. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I think it wants to give us support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in the 5. And he said, should the president be able to federalize the National Guard? And is that a violation of the Second Amendment? And does that action go against the Constitution? To answer the question, not politically and just straight up the way it's asked, should the president be able to federalize the National Guard? Not really a question of should he be able to or not. If he has a legal right to do it, he can, which he does have the legal right to do that. It may be controversial. People may not like it, but there is a legal precedent for it. Is it a violation of the Second Amendment? Nope. The Second Amendment is about gun ownership primarily. There's some other things in there, but it wouldn't really relate to the Second Amendment. And also, does it go against the Constitution? Not really. Not on its face, it doesn't. But the problem is, though, if you deploy the military and you don't invoke the Insurrection Act, you technically don't have the authority to do that. So it would be an unlawful deployment of troops. So if it was done improperly, it could be unconstitutional. And right now, I'm not really sure if it was done properly or not. But that just answered that question as simplistically as possible. But thank you very much for the support, Andrew, and I hope that answered it. But Enforcer, what say you?
Matthew is pretty much correct on all that. The president does have the authority to federalize the National Guard through. It really isn't specific. Actually, to lay this out there to you all, it's. The Constitution actually doesn't explain anything about how our modern military system works. Our modern functioning of the military and the state and federal system that exist has actually been formed over the entirety of the nation's history. And really that started after the end of the Civil War, where we saw that the existence of a federal army started to become a much more significant thing. And especially after the end of World War II, a federal army, a federal standing army that was permanent was really the big thing. Before that, militias, actually state militias, which are the National Guard, actually had to be federalized by the president to really raise an army. Like that was technically how it used to work back in the day, back when the country was originally founded. Because if you look at the Civil War, for example, Lincoln wasn't working with the 82nd Airborne and the 101st Airborne, which are a part of the federal army. He was working with things like the 6th Ohio and the 9th Pennsylvanian, which were state militias that were raised or largely how would they say it? Stood up. That's what they say in the modern day in some branches. They were stood up and then federalized to be under the command of the federal government through President Lincoln. That's how that worked in the Civil War. But later on, it actually started to shift a little bit. And now in the present day, we see that the National Guard is largely considered to be the auxiliaries, which in ancient terms, or more so medieval terms, those are pretty much like your second-rate troops. They're not as good as the first-rate troops. And the Federal Army is your first-rate troops. So they're your actual proper line infantry. If we're putting this in older terms to try and simplify it all. The Federal Army is the line infantry. The National Guard is like the skirmish or light infantry. They're less trained, less numerous, and use, well, they don't really use different, well, that's getting into the weeds there. But beyond that, that's kind of how it works. So he actually does have the authority, even by the original way that the Army worked, to federalize militias or National Guards. He actually does have the authority to do that. But as far as using them in California, that's where there's a bit of a question. This is certainly not the first time that National Guards have been federalized, and National Guards and even the Army has been used inside of the United States. I mean, hell, if you think that the unrest that people see nowadays is something foreign to America, then you're just living in a political fiction. Let me go show you all the Newark riots right here. So these were the streets of Newark back in 1967. This is what they don't show you about the 60s. When you look at the 60s nowadays, you know what they show you? They show you Martin Luther King Jr. on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial giving the I Have a Dream speech. They show these beautiful cars. They show wonderful beaches of people in these nice little clothes. The reality is that the 1960s, the 70s, really every decade in America has been as filled with unrest as the current decade is right now. It's just that there was a little bit of a break, kind of, not really, in the 2000s because of the whole war on terror thing that made people think that this isn't the norm because they got a reprieve from it for about a decade or so. But these kinds of things were actually quite common. And you'll see that even then, the National Guard was federalized. Let me see if I can go show you all some pictures here of the Newark riots. The National Guard was federalized. They were brought out in the streets. I believe some people actually were shot and killed by the National Guard during the Newark riots. But they just don't tell you anything about this stuff. Like, for example, right here. Literal U.S. Army personnel carriers in the streets of Newark, New Jersey, back in the day, back in 1967. This kind of stuff, like this, they don't show you. Like, it's entirely a modern-day fiction that the U.S. has always been stable and there's been no riots or unrest, and it used to be peaceful and calm. It never was. It never was. Like, I could find you an example from any decade or any year where shit was hitting the fan somewhere in this country. From some
when was the rooftop Koreans?
That was during the Rodney King riots back in the 90s.
Oh wow, that was actually a decent time ago. Actually,
yeah,
I remember that one. I see the footage from it.
Yeah, and then I think in this, it was in the early '80s. The Black Panther Party took over the California State Capitol building. Like they broke into the Capitol, raided the thing, and then held control of it with machine guns, mind you. This was before the National Firearms Act of 1984, which made machine gun ownership a lot more difficult. And that actually was one of the big things back then that actually pushed for more stricter gun control on machine guns, was that the Black Panther Party pretty much forcefully took over with arms, with machine guns, actually, the state capital of California, which was a big thing at the time. And then in the 70s, of course, you all know the Kent State protests, riots, whatever you want to call them. The National Guard actually did shoot some people there. The 60s, you had a lot of race riots, which is a bit of an unknown thing. Like, everyone always talks about the civil rights movement and the peaceful side of it with Martin Luther King Jr. But while there was the peaceful side, there was quite, like everything, it pushed to the pole. There was a different group that was far more violent, and these were the kinds of things that would result. You would see race riots and things like that in places like Newark. And then if you go into the 1950s, there was civil unrest. Well, there wasn't really that much civil unrest in the 50s, per se. World War II had just ended, and really there was a lot of things going on. There was also this big anti-communist movement that was going on in the country, which a lot of people consider to be reprehensible because it was really screwing over a lot of people's lives with absolutely no truth behind it. But you didn't really see a lot of massive riots during the 50s. There were some, but not many. The 1940s, you didn't really see a lot. It was mostly wartime through that decade, and then the post-war era right after that, so not really a lot then. During the 30s, good Lord, people would be blown away with what the 30s looked like. Riots were everywhere. Homeless people were everywhere. The economy collapsed. Compared to what y'all think would happen nowadays, the 30s was hell. There was nothing good about the 1930s to be alive during that time. Most people had it rough, incredibly rough, and there was also a lot of civil unrest. 1920s, plenty of civil unrest. I mean, hell, go look at the Harlan County. Harlan County war. Let me go here. Bloody Harlan. Here we go. You can see that right there. Once again, the army is out there in the middle of Harlan County in Kentucky, pretty much fighting the coal miners. There was a lot that went on here. See, over the course of 1931 to 1939, the United Mine Workers, which was a labor union at the time, still exists today. 13 mine workers got killed directly by law enforcement or the National Guard or the Army. And then on the other hand, the Kentucky National Guard, the private guards like the Pinkertons, and the mine operators, 5 of those guys got killed over the course of those years. I mean, like, it was quite almost a war zone up here in this area. Like, hell, just the Louisville and Nashville building a railroad into this area in the 1910s. They had to call up the Pinkertons because the locals didn't want the outside world coming on into the mountains. And there were firefights happening all the time then. I mean, like, you could find any period. Like, hell, Reconstruction? Good Lord, y'all gotta look into Reconstruction if y'all want to see civil unrest. There were riots everywhere. People were getting killed left and right. But still, to say this is more so of kind of like a normal thing, but the thing that's kind of been the debate at this point, at least right now, is whether this is an overstep. Because usually back in the day, for federal government assistance or federal forces to come in, that had to be at the request of a state governor, because it's supposed to be understood that the states are separate from the federal government. The federal government is one thing, and the states are separate. Although, you know, the federal government has the final say, it's the tiebreaker on things. So the federal government coming in like it did, and also saying that they possibly want to arrest the governor of a state, that's where the real debate's lying. Like, if you actually look at it on a realistic view, it's lying in between, is this an overstep of federal authority, or is this just the right amount of federal authority? But that's really
I think most people would agree it's an overreaction for certain. I don't now. You really can't argue whether or not there's a legal right. There is clearly a legal right to do it. If you study the law, it's clearly a legal right. Like he can invoke the Insurrection Act. There's clearly massive riots going on out there, so it's not up for debate about the riots. But the question is, you know, even though you can do something, doesn't mean you should always do something. If the president has the right to deploy the entire military across the country in every major city just because he could, that doesn't mean you do it just because you have the right to do it. You have to use discretion. You have to use good judgment and your intellect to, you know, make the right decision as a leader. You can't just like do things with just emotions at hand, or otherwise things start getting stupid, kind of like we're seeing right now. So you can accidentally inflame things worse by overreacting, and in fact cause the complete opposite of what you're trying to prevent, which I think is sort of what's happening right now to a large extent. So I would say it's certainly an overreaction for certain. Like sending in troops against the governor's prerogative, even if the governor is wrong, it's like, you know, going to public odds with the governor over that, even if he is wrong, it's not the right move. You know, it's just not, because look how it's ended up. The proof's in the pudding. It's enraging things. It's not calming it down.
And also another thing that a lot of people forget in the modern era is the difference between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. A lot of people don't even know the beginning of this country and how the Constitutional Convention went as a result of it. People were scared of the federal government because they said a person could come in, and if the federal government is truly all-powerful over the states, they could pretty much just become a tyrant and strip each state of its rights and its individuality and pretty much run the country like a dictatorship where there's no respect of different governmental institutions or really roadblocks to slow things down. There's going to be no brakes on this person. They could go till the cows come home and no one's going to be able to stop them. And that's why when the Constitution was written, there was a clear distinction between the federal government and the states being equal powers. Like the Supreme Court has the final decision-making ability in between issues that arise within the state and the federal government, but the federal government is not superior to the states. The federal government is on an equal level, except for matters that arise under the Supreme Court between the states and the federal government on any given issue. So it's not supposed to be the president has ability to come into your state, and if he doesn't like what you're doing, literally just pretty much strip you from your governorship and then run the state like a federal district. That isn't supposed to happen. That's just not supposed to happen. Like, there's no Like, that's not political. That's quite literally just how the government and how the nation was structured. If you think that that's the way it's supposed to work, then I'd have to argue, like, and this not isn't trying to jab people, but you don't even know what the Constitution says, and you don't even know anything about American history beyond 60-second TikTok reels, because that's just never how it was supposed to run. And a lot of people back in the day, and I'm still one of those big people, believes in the rights of the states. Like, the states do have a right on most things to have their own say. If you don't like what's going on in Los Angeles and you're from Idaho, tough shit, buddy. Because the people in California don't have a say in your state. Why the hell are you owed a say in theirs? If they don't like what's going on in LA, well, that's unfortunate on them, and they need to go vote themselves in a new governor and a state legislator if they don't like it that badly. But it's not your responsibility, and it's not your decision to go into another state and tell them how to run it. If I move, like for example, I'm in Alabama, and Alabama has very lax laws on guns. If I move to Oregon, I'm going to largely respect that they have a lot more stringent laws on firearms. Like that, I just know that, and that's their state. That's what the majority of their citizens wanted. It was a very slim majority, but still the majority. And that's what their state is. I'm not going to go in there and act like, oh, I'm from Alabama and I had loads of gun rights. I want the federal government to come in and crush the Oregon state government and tell them exactly what I want them to do. No, I'm coming in there to their state as a citizen from Alabama, now becoming a citizen of Oregon. If I don't like it, I'm going to vote in their state against that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to come in and say, I'm going to use the federal government like a damn wrecking ball and just come in here and blast your state to pieces with what y'all want, because screw you. Like, that's just completely usurping the rights of the states. And that's something that I'm not for at all. Because then once you do that, you pretty much have a dictatorship.
And also, by the way, I see some people making this point, and I can understand why people might think this, because that's the narrative just being put out there. Some people are saying, let me scroll back up to it. They're saying that it's not inappropriate when it involves federal agents prosecuting their duties or protecting federal property, and referring to the deployment of National Guard. And I assume they're referring to the deployment of federal troops as well. The problem is, though, these federal agencies that are conducting these immigration raids, these are well-armed agencies. These are not like, your average, like, local police. These are well-armed people. Like, ICE is very well-armed, Border Patrol is well-armed, and they're all under DHS, which is the Department of Homeland Security. So they're well-equipped with Black Hawk helicopters. They've got the best kit. They've got the best guns. They've got good body armor. They are kitted out. So it's not like they're ill-equipped to handle the situation. It's just that they're deciding to escalate it to the next step, which is to bring in the National Guard and federalize the troops where they're under federal control, and then bring in the federal military. Honestly, the most wild step to me was not bringing in the National Guard. It's not too uncommon to do that with National Guard. In fact, it is pretty common to bring National Guard out during times of riots, and totally justified, to be perfectly honest. But the part that was a little bit crazy, not a little bit, actually a lot crazy, was for one of the first times in a very long time, bringing out active duty Marines onto the streets. That is supposed to be reserved for extremely rare cases of civil unrest, not what we're seeing right now. What we're seeing right now is bad, but it's not justifying crossing that boundary by any means. National Guard, fine, that's a whole different animal than bringing out Marines. And I think that was intended to make a point, which is not a good point to make, that, that basically the government's going to crush something they don't like. That's sending a bad message. Even if it might be justified in theory, it's a bad message to send to people, because it chills other people from wanting to go and protest that are actually protesting within their rights. Yes, the rioters are committing crimes. They need to be prosecuted, but there's also people that are legitimately protesting in other places that will now feel like, oh crap, if I go out there, the Marines might kick my ass if I go out there to protest normally, which is, it's chilling a right that Americans have had since the founding of the country, which is not good.
Also, I saw someone's Blickety said, except the governor was the one wrecking their own state. Well, that's not the federal government's responsibility to fix that. I don't know if you get that. Get that through your head really quickly. It isn't the federal government's responsibility to treat the states like they're their children and they're their bitches. Okay, that's not the responsibility of the federal government. If you think that, then you literally are going against the very thing that the founding fathers didn't want. Like, almost all of them didn't want that. And so you're saying, like, I know what you are. Like, you're one of those McPatriot people. I want to uphold the Constitution. You don't even know what the hell the Constitution means. You don't even read it. Like, to say something like that. Like, yeah, if the governor of California is ripping the state apart, That is a damn shame. I feel sorry for everyone in California. I hope that they're smart enough to vote the guy out. That's the actual answer, because this country is based on a system of laws and a system of processes that were laid out 250 years ago. And so if the citizens of California don't like it and you don't like watching their state get ripped apart, then for you, the answer is that is a shame that that's happening in California. And for the people in California, they go, I don't like the governor, I'm going to vote him out. And that's the answer that you get. And also another thing that a lot of people aren't getting is that, I won't go on that one. It's a waste of time. And also someone said,
And also I saw here, Cummins said, so you're saying lawlessness should run rampant in California. Now, see, listen, I've grown up in an environment where arguments like that were made constantly, and it was like the end all be all, like, or at least it was the catch all. Just because I'm saying that a line was crossed doesn't mean I'm saying that lawlessness should run rampant. I just said the protesters that are out there, I'm not even going to call them protesters, the rioters that are out there tearing the city up and burning Waymos to the ground and also burning stuff and vandalizing property, those are criminals. So obviously I don't support that. They should be arrested. But here's the catch, though. LAPD is the police force in the area. That's the local municipal law enforcement authority that arrests those people and locks them up. That's their job. If they can't handle it and they need to call in backup, they have the ability to ask the governor to deploy the National Guard to come in and help and basically protect the police while they arrest people, which is what happened to a certain degree. But the only problem is, though, the federal government decided we're going to actually take over the states' right and federalize those National Guard troops. Now we control them, meaning the federal government controls them, and the governor doesn't in the state. That was already a little bit overstepping right there with that one. But I'm not saying at all lawlessness should run rampant. That's not at all. I think most people listening understand I'm not saying that, neither is the enforcer. But I think that's the problem with the modern day political environment. If somebody says something they don't like to hear, they start twisting the narrative so that way they can try to attack without a basis.
Yeah, and it's ignorant. Also, I can see this Blickety person clearly has a political bias. So let's say this, Blickety. Okay, I'm going to flip it around like to where it makes sense for you. So you live clearly in a more so right-leaning state. So what if Biden didn't like something that was happening in your state and he federalized the National Guard and then came out and said he was going to try and arrest the governor of your state because he didn't like what was going on in it? You wouldn't agree with that. And you'd be damned to rights to not agree to that. Like, that's just a fair assessment of the thing. You would like that would be a massive overstep of federal authority. Like, that's kind of the basic sense of it. And so that's what people like you don't get. It's justified to pretty much warp the Constitution or just do whatever you want when it's in your best interest. But when the next political party gets in charge and then they come around and they do it to you, then it's wrong. But now you've pretty much got the snowball rolling down the hill at that point that you're going to you get yourself screwed over in the future because of your own short-sighted stupidity in the present day. Like that's the reality of it. And now this person's saying, if I had a history of a governor neglecting my state, I would want Biden overstepping. No, you wouldn't, because the truth is, man, is that you're a guy who toes the political line like anyone else, like anyone in politics. Like there are people who will blindly say stuff that just doesn't make sense. You're one of them, and so you'll sit there and say, oh, I would be fine with that. And then if it happened, you would be saying it's outrageous. Because you know something that's crazy? That did happen. That happened during the Wuhan whirlybird to some extent. And I remember that people were outraged over that like they should have been. And it's happening again. And now people are not outraged. Some people are not outraged over it. Some other people are. The opposite side is now. And I think that everyone ought to just get their heads around overstepping of federal authority and pretty much stamping on the states' rights to pretty much be their own thing is not a good thing across the board. Like that's something that people ought to understand. And also, if people are rioting were foreigners waving Mexican flags and homeless people, and my government chooses to ignore them, what type of an argument is this, dude? If that's happening in California, that's their responsibility to deal with. And if people don't like it in California, they'll vote their government out and get a new one. If they're fine with that, they're fine with that. That's what happens in their state. Like that's what it is.
Here's an interesting question. Run and Gunny. He said, honest question. If the police need more assistance in LA and the governor refuses to call in the National Guard, is there a progression in place? There is a progression in place. In fact, what occurred was the progression. The problem was, though, I don't know if maybe I'm just misinformed on this or not. I don't recall Los Angeles requesting to the governor officially for the National Guard and it being refused. I didn't never heard about that. I don't think the mayor there, I don't know her name. You know the lady's name that's the mayor in Los Angeles?
I don't. I just remember.
It's like I can't remember her name. Like I see her face, but I can't remember her name. But whatever the mayor is in Los Angeles, I think her name's Karen Bass. That's it. She never actually requested a National Guard from the governor, according to what I've heard, and the governor didn't have a chance to reject it or accept it because it was never requested. Now, is that a shortcoming on the mayor's part? Yes. Because obviously the police were getting overwhelmed and they needed the National Guard, so she should have requested them from the governor. But the problem is, though, the U.S. president then took it upon himself, after there's been no request formally made to the governor yet, to step in and federalize National Guard troops that hadn't even been requested and send them in against the governor's, apparently his prerogative. So, I mean, yes, the National Guard was needed, but the process in which it was gone about was not due process. Due process ain't even the right word. It wasn't. I don't know what the right word is. It wasn't above board, I guess you could say, or something. It just wasn't the right thing to do, at least in my opinion. If it was done right, then yes, send the National Guard out. But it was just sort of done in a way that was kind of backwards compared to how it was supposed to be.
Also, once again, another thing that's important to lay out, if the mayor of the city is so stupid, let's just say hypothetically, that this riot is going out of control and they're literally burning the whole city down, and that's happening, the real answer, the American answer to that is, well, the people living in LA voted for that person, so if they don't like what's happening right now, when the next voting cycle comes around, they vote them out. Hopefully the governor would step in, and if the governor doesn't step in, then after days of it going on, maybe even a week or two of it going on, then you get to the president, and then the president goes, I'm going to have to step in. But at that point, the damage is probably done. But that's how it works. Like when we sit here, like, let's think about this, folks. Okay, there's one president in charge right now. This president has the ability to run the country into the ground, like every other president has had for history. He could run the damn thing into the ground. He could get us nuked into oblivion and killed tomorrow. Like he could. Like every president ever since nuclear weapons have existed could do those two things. And what if we say, well, it looks like the president isn't really doing what we want. Should the whole country go and just run up to Washington, D.C. and just literally chuck him out a window? No, because that would be undemocratic. That's going against the entire process the country is built on. You just got to pray to God that he doesn't get everyone killed. And then when the next election cycle comes around, get his ass out. Like, that's how it works. Like, I know a lot of people don't believe in the democratic process, and to y'all I say you were traitors to the country. I believe in the democratic process, and if people vote for stupid things happen. I find it also funny that everyone wanted LA to burn to the ground until the people in LA started to burn it to the ground, and now everyone's acting like it's our responsibility to save them. No, if people in LA voted for that, that's what they're getting. Like I'm not saying that like out of vengeance or spite or anything, but if that's how goofy the local government is, then maybe them seeing the consequences of their own vote will change their minds. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not saying that to punish them or anything, but that's just how it works.
Also, one of the fellows I've called out earlier, he said, you're completely right. This seems like an invasion of the United States. To me, seems like a federal problem. I think you're getting mixed up there a little bit. The federal government is solely responsible for border security. Like, that's the federal government's responsibility. That's why states can go down to the border. And then, for example, like Texas, they're not supposed to go down to the border and start messing with the border fence, adding to it, dismantling it. That's the federal government's prerogative to do that. But the problem is, though, the people that you're referring to, I assume you're referring to illegal immigrants that are already inhabiting certain U.S. cities. Yes, it's up to ICE and DHS to get them out. But the problem is, though, they can't trample all over state rights while they're doing that. They have to do it within the boundaries of the law. They can't just go haywire and say, okay, well, there's illegals here, so we're just going to go and pillage the whole state because it's convenient. If we operated like that, we would be just a state of anarchy. If we operated like that, they have to abide by the law, which means going about it in a certain process. There's nothing wrong with them getting the illegals out of the city. That's perfectly within their rights, but they can't just do it willy-nilly. There's a process to follow.
Yeah, I would say, Also, by the way, Jack Jelly brought up the whole segregation thing in Arkansas in the 50s. The thing is that there was a federal law at that point that had said that segregation was unlawful. And so then the state was going against the lawfulness of this new federal act. So because of that, they then went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court declared that the state of Arkansas was conducting that unconstitutionally. The federal government then said, will you now desegregate these places, these public places elsewhere? And they said no. And so then the federal government actually had the right to federalize the National Guard and then move forward. Like that was done through an entirely legal process. It wasn't just done like, I feel like doing this today. Let's federalize the National Guard and send them in. Like, it was a very lengthy legal process that went into that before that happened, as it should be. I'm not saying that I'm against such a thing happening. Like, for example, the National Guard or even the Marines being brought out into LA. But you have to follow the actual process that we have as a republic to do something like that, or else you're largely operating outside of the law, which is a very dangerous kind of a thing to do. People don't get that until it happens to them. Like, would y'all like it if the cops, would y'all like it if you got into road rage with an off-duty cop, then you couldn't tell you were a cop, they got your license plate, tracked down your home address, and then showed up when they were on duty to your house, busted down your door, and then shot your wife? And then said that you had drugs in the house and they were there on exigent circumstances because they heard that some violent act was happening in your house. Would you like that? And would you like it if you then try to go and try and get some sort of redressive grievances in court, and then the courts just said, oh, whatever. I mean, you're a little drug dealing jackass, go burn in hell. We're not going to do anything with that. Like, would y'all like that? No. And so you gotta operate through the letter of the law, because once you start to break that down, things can just descend into anarchy. It'd practically be like the mafia running the country. A little bit dangerous grounds with that. And everyone keeps pushing the boundaries. Under the last administration, they pushed the boundaries a great deal. They started to come down on states and put the elbow on them because they weren't given the right response to the Wuhan whirlybird. Now, under the current administration, it just seems like any kind of dissent that isn't supported by the current political party might be put down with heavy force. And it's like both of those things are just wild oversteps of federal authority, like to an insane degree. And instead of people looking at it for what it is and equally calling it down because it's generally a non-American act, in my opinion, I'd say it's generally un-American. Everyone just keeps on saying, well, because it's my political party doing it this time, it's entirely justified that we are completely breaking apart the federal and state processes and we're just doing whatever the hell we want. But, sometimes I feel like I'm talking to an empty room with that. Not really a lot of people agree with that. And I mean, hell, what's the problem with, at some point in the future, you just get, freaking persecuted for your political beliefs. I mean, I don't think there's anything really wrong with that, because that's where it's going. I mean, it really, at this point, it just kind of is a question of who's going to be setting up the camps. Is it going to be the Republicans or the Democrats, and who's going to get put in them? That, honestly, at that point, that's really what I'm seeing, because so many people are so blind to it that they're marching themselves right into Russian roulette of whether they're going to be the one in the concentration camp or whether they're going to be the one out of it. So, take it for what you will. Anyways, with that, I hope that was the best answer I could give there, as neutral as it could be. And with that, it is time for us to get on to the next ones. Also, Mandy, how many super chats do we have left?
So let's see here. We have about 10 left.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to have to speed it up a little bit, folks, because we are starting to go a little overtime. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
So our next one here goes to Mr. Lunchtime, who is actually in LA right now, and he puts in a $40 donation. And thank you very much, Mr. Lunchtime, for that support. And also, stay toasty, my friends. He said, good work, guys, and thanks for staying politically neutral. And take a question from the chat. And Enforcer Matt, please read the question Elon style. And stay toasty, my friends.
And I thank you so much for support, Mr. Lunchtime. And thank you so much for enjoying the channel and enjoying our politically neutral takes. And of course, someone in here is going to say that we're political because we're saying that this is what the law says instead of it saying what they want. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for support and appreciating it. We try our best here. And we will make sure to get a question in your honor, a live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Peace with War, who said, does Russia even have the means to arm an army to fight NATO at this point?
Really, they don't. But once again, like I was saying earlier, it doesn't really necessarily stop them from going to war because they have the nuclear weapons to fall back on. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And I thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, moving on to our next one here. This one is going to go to none other than, guess who? It is the Dane Company, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He said, as a Marine myself, I don't believe it was overstepped, as they are protecting federal buildings only. But Marines are trained to unalive people, so sending us in should be a last resort circumstance, IMO. I don't think they're giving them real bullets, though. I will say that, Dane Company. You were in the Marines. I don't think they're giving them real bullets, me personally, because it's one thing to put the Marines out there. It's another thing to actually arm them. They may be holding their weapons, but I doubt that they have bullets in them. That's my assumption. So I doubt they're going to be unaliving anybody. That's just my guess, though. I don't know that for a fact. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, I thank you for the support. I would say, at least at this point, this early on, it does seem to me to be overstepped. They should have sent out the National Guard first, seen how that went, and then if things continue to get worse, then bring in the Marines. If it's stabilized, just keep it at the National Guard, and if things improve, just keep it with the National Guard. There's got to be escalatory steps, but really pulling out all the stops, bringing in the National Guard and the Federal Army, or really the Federal Marines, at the same time, so quite truly pulling out all of the escalatory stops to this whole thing off the bat. I see where you're coming from, though, but still at the same time, I feel like it should have been done with a lot more consideration and a lot more of testing to be done, largely seeing how things work, if it's going good, if it's getting worse, and then reacting to the situation as it goes, instead of just seeing something happen and then pulling all the stops out almost on day one. But still, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Penny Lay, who puts in a $5 donation. Thank you very much for that support. They said, what are the lyrics to the LSA song?
From beginnings bold to futures untold, the white and gold will forever unfurl. Our armies will lead us steadfast, united forever into futures untold, futures unknown. For the Lee Spring army will stand up bold as the battles rage soundly whirl. Our armies will stand steadfast forever into the futures untold, futures unknown. And that's the lyrics of the LSA anthem, like, just in case you were wondering. Very bad singing. I don't do good at singing, but I had to do it in the last part because I had to, remember the actual lyrics according to the actual song. But a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And Banned in China just became banned in America as well. Crazy. but anyway, so that we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ryan H., who puts in the 5. And thank you very much, Ryan, for that support. He said, hello, Enforcers, and great stream as always. And is the $30 million to $45 million cost of the June 14th parade, plus up to $16 million in road repairs, is it worth it? And LSA.
Oh, that's a question we can't get into. Oh. Hopefully we see more sesquicentennial celebrations and holidays for the Marines, the Army. We already got the Army. That's coming up soon. The Navy and the all the others that were founded in 1775. Hopefully so, but I don't think that's happening. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Rapier Whip, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. They said, you have a great mind for the politics, so here's to you getting into it one day.
And I thank you for support. And thank you for hoping that I get into politics one day. I hate it so much, I just kind of want to get in there to try and reset things. Not like the stupid way, like the great resets and all those goofy fantasies. Just actually try and get it back to being boring. But people probably wouldn't like boring. That wouldn't be exciting enough for them. They want to watch the country burn itself apart and rip itself apart and rip the Constitution up. So maybe I could do that too. I'm just kidding. I'd never do that. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And shout out to Nova, who puts in the $4 donation, and thank you, Nova, as well, for that support. And they said, hey, guys, and shout out for telling me about Agenda-Free TV and No Narrative BS, and it's really good, and thanks for recommending, and LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And we're always happy to promote Agenda-Free TV. Great show. I mean, he covers a lot of things that we don't cover, so he's kind of like the supplement to stuff that we don't really touch on much. So I thank you so much for the support. I thank you for enjoying the recommendation. I hope you enjoy his channel greatly. Steve Luckner is a pretty good guy at what he does. He's pretty much got like a cult-like following on YouTube because he's been doing it for literally forever. But a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Plazoth, who puts in a $4 donation. And thank you very much, Plazoth, as well, for always supporting the channel and also helping to keep it running. And we also have a $2 support from LSA Sergeant Figment, who said, hit the like button. That's in order.
Hey, and that is in order. Hit that like button, folks. We actually got up to 3,500 likes tonight, which is impressive. Wild to see. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. Hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $2 support from Noah Atter, who puts in that 2 and says, a moment of silence from a wallet in LSA.
And thank you so much for the support. And long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from Quasi, who says, heart the Enforcer Bros, and LLT, LSA, and Slava Ukraine.
Hey, and a big heart to the LSA, and long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Chris Webb, who puts in a $2 donation. And thank you very much, Chris Webb, for that $2 support. And he said, coffee fun.
And coffee fun. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And it is now time to jump into our live chat questions proper. It is that time of the night to get the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, and Arabelle Garbo. They said the Morse reads, Russia is acting out with their massive strikes, which are just drones. Yep, that's it. And LLT, LSA.
And and that's the sound of money. Y'all got the correct dent on the nail. And I got to congratulate y'all, the Lee Spring Army Signal Corps, for continuing to get the Morse code message correct time and time again. So a big shout out to y'all. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to AF Kaplan, who said, since Iran has rejected this latest round of negotiations, do you see any signs of action about to be taken against them?
And I'd have to say, I don't think so. I don't think any action is going to be taken against them, at least right now. We're going into the 6th round of talks, and Israel is probably still a little bit wary about pissing off the U.S. if they went ahead and bombed them. So I'd say, I don't really know. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we actually have 2 more Super Chats to address. So Matthew, what do we got?
And this one goes to the Dane Company once again, who puts in a 20 this time. And thank you very much, Dane Company, for that support. He said, I do apologize. I don't always try to sound so negative. And I do enjoy the content very much. And the knowledge is amazing. And a big heart to the LSA.
Hey, and long live Lee Spring Army. I actually don't think I've heard you being negative at all. Apology accepted. But I don't think I heard you being negative, really. But I do thank you for the support, and thank you for enjoying the content. Sometimes we don't see eye to eye with everyone, but it's never supposed to be a personal thing. You know, it's really just kind of what Matthew and me do on there. Sometimes we're like, I don't know about this, I don't know about that. It's just there can't really be a back and forth because y'all are throwing in a super chat and we're just reading it and then responding to it. But still, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that fairly well, the Dane Company. And thank you once again for the incredible support and helping us to keep this thing running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Adam McLean, who put in a 10. And thank you very much, Adam, for the support once again. He said, to hell with the bad guys.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Gunfox, who said, what do you think of B-83? Do you think that'll do the job?
A B-83. Let me make sure to pull that up so that way I have that correct. Oh, yeah, that would do the job. I was thinking it might be a gravity bomb. And yeah, that would do the job. Quite impressively so, really. I mean, these things actually have a pretty decent yield for this kind of size. But still, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Mr. Drake. He said, could Ukraine hackers manipulate Russian anti-aircraft systems to make them think that it's Ukraine aircraft?
They possibly could, but we don't really know how easy it would be to break into those systems all at one time. It might be incredibly difficult, but at least with the one-off air defense systems, they possibly could, and they might be able to take a gun or two out of the air defense scenario for that reason. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching. We actually reached a peak viewership of nearly 11,000 people here tonight. 10.7 thousand people were here at the peak, and 77,000 people have watched before the stream ended. We're entirely honored and appreciative to have had each and every single one of y'all here, and we hope y'all enjoyed it greatly. If y'all did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because we are here 6 days a week, every single day at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world. And so with that, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover those next 24 hours of news. And if there's enough news to cover, Matthew will actually be giving y'all the Shore War news video of tomorrow. And so, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukrainian, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all once again for joining us yet again tonight on day 1203 of the news, and to all 7,000 people that were here by the end. We appreciate every single one of you, and we do hope that you join us tomorrow for the next night of War News streams, and also the short war video midday tomorrow. If there is enough news, I'm going to try my damnedest to make one tomorrow, so you'll probably be seeing one. But if there's not, you'll know that there was literally so little news, there was not enough to make it midday. But anyways, thank you all for smacking that like button, and of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, get some rest, and good night.